We'll start with you. You drew a very nice goat. Yes.
Hi, everybody. I am Constance Okolait from Tororo. The organization is called the Sukuru United Women Network. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good morning. Abudu Swanyan is my name from the Institute for Social Transformation.
Welcome, Institute of Social Transformation.
Good morning, everyone. I am Gloria Nachmo from EITI Secretariat.
EITI is, thank you, if you don't mind. You've had a microphone. We would like to benefit from EITI, what it means.
EITI is Extractive Initiative Transparency. It works with extractive sector in terms of transparency and accountability.
Thank you very much. So we have the minerals here.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's Susan Wasubire. I work with Climate Action Network Uganda. Climate Action Network convenes civil society for climate action. Thank you.
Thank you. So when we are discussing environmental concerns and why we need carbon taxes, she will be very helpful. Next.
Thank you so much, Moderator Suna. My name is Robert Liachira, Executive Director Agnet. We focus on climate finance, and I'm very interested in how we can use climate financing for domestic resource mobilization. Thank you so much.
Welcome, Robert.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Walugembe William. I am from the Office of the Auditor General. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Office of the Auditor General. We have to hold government accountable. Thank you. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Grace Akatuha. I'm a founder of a company called Chikazi Agri Products. We specialize in millets. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Private sector represented. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Doreen Navidia from Parliament. Thank you.
We have the parliamentarians here.
Good morning. I'm Namwe Susan. I coordinate Uganda Parliamentary Forum for Children at Parliament. Nice to be here.
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Good morning. I'm called Marcus Mogome, a tax justice campaigner from Brisa District, representing Kawida. Thank you.
You're from the oil city. It's the next focus for the next 20 years at least. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Justin Yamwiza from EcoBank.
EcoBank. Interesting.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. David Walakida, a Local Government Finance Commission, the Local Revenue Department.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm called Charles Muzuche from Ministry of Law Government.
Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Baluku Derek. I work with the Uganda National NGO Forum.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Rehma Kahunde from the Economic Policy Research Center, Makerere University.
Welcome, Rehma.
Good morning. My name is Mark Mugisa. I'm the District Revenue Officer, Brisa.
Welcome again from the oil city.
Good morning. Joanna Kachkunda is my name. I work with Women and Girl Child Development Association.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Pereth Nwahereza. I represent Uganda Women's Network.
UNET, welcome.
Good morning. My name is James Opito. I work for Accord as the coordinator for Civil Society Coalition on Oil and Gas. Thank you.
Good morning, members. My name is Jane Namaganda. I'm from Uganda Parliamentary Network on Financial Elect.
Welcome, welcome. Apparently, the goat that he drew was awarded the best, so you may need to borrow notes from him after the introductions.
Naoya Bruno is my name, the Chief Administrative Officer, Madio Kolo, District Local Government. Thank you.
Welcome. Cow.
I'm Abaru Sarah, Finance Officer, Mariokolo.
Okay.
Good morning. My name is Moses, Revenue Officer, Tororo DLG.
Gengere Christopher for the Chief Administrative Officer, Tororo. Thank you.
Okay, so people are seated in their district local government and it is we will mix you up later, but it's fine. Next.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Hilda Tumuhe. I work with ATTAIN.
Welcome, Hilda.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lilian Zawede Senteza. I work with Transparency International Uganda.
Transparency International, welcome.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm called Asemwa Mugumya. I'm a programs officer with the Youth for Tax Justice Network. Happy to be here.
Okay, the youth are in the room.
Good morning. I'm Moses Orengi. I work for West Nile Regional Civil Society Network based in Arua. Thank you.
Welcome, welcome, West Nile.
Good morning, everyone. I am Patrick Omoy. I work with Agents for Community Empowerment. We are in NEBI, but operating in West Nile sub-region. Thank you.
Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. I'm called Bereti Jennifer from African Agency for Integrated Development, the Program Coordinator. Thank you.
Welcome.
Good morning. I'm called Helen from African Institute for Energy Government.
African Institute for Energy Governance, welcome.
Good morning, everybody. My name is C. Merona, and I work with the J. Malo Foundation. I see that our theme envisions an inclusive society. We work with people with disabilities.
Welcome.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Marina Nyanzi, and I work with Traweza East Africa. I'm a member of the Tax Justice Alliance. Thank you.
Welcome. Traweza.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Zara Ausi Chibawa, and I work with the Initiative for Social and Economic Rights.
Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. I'm called Women and Janine. I work with ASC, that's East Africa Sub-Regional Support Initiative for Advancement of Women.
Welcome. Yes, see.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Herbert Kafero. I work with ATTAIN. Thank you.
Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. I'm called Samuel Mase. I work with ATTAIN Uganda.
Good morning. I am Nebert Rugadius. I am a journalist.
Welcome. Our journalists in the room. Let's bring it to the front table here.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. That is nice. My name is Eliot Olizarwa. I am a freelance, but I'm interested in tax just work and most especially the responsiveness.
Welcome.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. My name is Kabahenda Flavia Rwaporo. I represent the people of Chegegwa district in the Parliament of Uganda, and I'm glad to be here.
Yes, thank you for sacrificing your time, especially at this time.
Special.
So, Madam Jane, maybe if you allow me, yes, if you allow me to, because I know it should be next in the agenda. So,
Okay.
you could introduce yourself, sir. Then we.
Good morning, comrades. My name is Tamale Francis. I work with ATTAIN.
Welcome, Tamale Francis. So, without further ado, I think you will allow me to welcome Madam Jane Narunga, the Executive Director of ATTAIN Uganda, to give us opening remarks. A hand of applause, please.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. Okay, that's better. Thank you so much, Robert. for the inviting me here, but also for your opening remarks. And for that drawing, I liked it. I liked that drawing. But it was also an icebreaker because, you know, sometimes when we talk about tax, accountability, domestic resource mobilization, people get scared, you know, but it was a very good icebreaker. So thank you so much. So I would like to, first of all, thank all of you who have traveled, you know, long journeys, you know, people who have come far, but also who have come from Kampala here. I would like to thank you so much for taking time off to come to this very, very important dialogue. This meeting is on the state of domestic revenue mobilization in Uganda. And we are looking at strengthening accountability for improved domestic revenue mobilization to attain a just and inclusive society. Those are very, very important words, a just and inclusive society. I would like to recognize, you know, all of you from the civil society, from the academia. I had Makerere University, our members of parliament, and I want to echo what Robert has said at this time. To get a member of parliament is really, really hard. So, Honorable Kabahenda, we are very, very grateful that you are here, and we wish you. We are sending you prayers. I also like to recognize the local government, no, from Bulisa, from Tororo, from all over. Thank you so much for being here. The Local Government Finance Commission, thank you so much for being here. Other ministries of finance, local government, and also Oxfam. Oxfam, they have support, we are partners in this project. And by the way, Oxfam has been supporting us for the last 30 years. No? Because ATTAIN, we are this year celebrating 30 years. And the people who have walked the journey with has been Oxfam. So Siraje sent back that message to Oxfam, but we officially recognize them. So we are very grateful that we have been able to partner with Oxfam to be able to undertake this project. This dialogue is coming at a very critical time. It's the right time to organize this meeting because of the challenges we are facing as a country. ODA, that's aid is going down. I won't talk a lot about that, but all of us, especially those of us in civil society, know that challenges we are passing through because of a reduction in aid. And we are seeing a lot of loans we are borrowing. And remember, when we borrow, we have to service those loans. And we are servicing from the resources we are mobilizing. We also have challenges. Challenges, for example, of climate crisis. I was reading somewhere that as Uganda, we need 28.1 billion to address our national determined contributions. 28.1 billion, and that's according to the Uganda Development Bank. So there are also challenges, which need financing. But amidst those challenges, we also have opportunities. Robert, you have been talking about the oil the oil, so we have the oil, and we also have critical minerals. Today, the world is talking about energy transition, clean energy. And Africa and Uganda, we have those critical minerals. So how can we be able to leverage on those minerals and be able to get an income out of that? So when we are looking at DRM, we need to look at the challenges, but we also need to look at the opportunities. As Robert pointed out, government is doing a lot to be able to put in place regulatory frameworks, to be able to build capacity in order to increase revenue mobilization. But the revenue mobilization is not yet at optimum level. Our tax to GDP level is still very low compared to the target. And I think the target is supposed to be between 16 and 18, and we are around 12%. So we still have a challenge of tax to GDP level. But we also still have a challenge of utilization, because the revenue cycle is about mobilization, allocation, and utilization. So we still have challenges in mobilization, but we also have challenges when it comes to allocation and also utilization. So there is also that disconnect between the mobilization and utilization. For us as civil society, we still feel that there are gaps in utilization in the way the resources mobilized, how they are utilized to provide services and infrastructure. There's still a gap there. And this has undermined trust. Government people here, members of parliament, when there are no social services, it undermines trust of the taxpayers. And we are all taxpayers, by the way. So it undermines that trust, and it diminishes the willingness of citizens to pay taxes. And this is what we call the social contract. It weakens that social contract. If I land in a pothole, what do I say? Where are our taxes? So the issue of utilization is very, very, very important. So these are some of the issues we are going to address here. How can government equitably mobilize resources equitably? And the underlying word is equitable and inclusive. How can government equitably? Because we don't want a system which is predatory, scavenging, taking everything. We don't want that system. We want everybody to pay their fair share. Not everybody pay their fair share, but that means we need to have systems in place. We need to be on the table. As we usually say, if you are not on the table, you're on the menu. So women, if you want equitable tax policies, women, we need to be on that table, isn't it? So, and that's why we are saying we need an inclusive process so that all the voices are heard. MSMEs, our private sector, our women, our youth, we need to be on the table. So the objective of this dialogue is broadly to strengthen that equitable and inclusive and accountable domestic resource mobilization. How do we do that? This is what we are going to discuss. And we want to analyze opportunities and challenges affecting effective and equitable revenue mobilization and accountability at both national and subnational level. There are many, many challenges at the local government level. Yet, when decentralization was put in place, the purpose was to take services nearer to the people. So, yet, even up to today, there are a number of challenges, so we need to address those challenges both at national and subnational level. We need to identify strategies to strengthen revenue mobilization and accountability mechanisms for inclusive service delivery. What are those strategies and how do we strengthen them? Another objective is to assess the gendered impacts of Uganda's current tax policies and revenue frameworks on various social groups, particularly women and the informal sector. What are those gendered impacts? Tax policies are not neutral, that they will affect men and women the same way. No. And we need to understand that. And our technocrats needs to understand that, that gendered impact and how we can be able to address it. So we want also to explore strategies for mainstreaming gender responsive and equity focused analysis into the design, allocation, utilization, and oversight of domestic revenue. So it's that issues are packed, but I think we can be able to see how we can be able to address them. And if there are other issues which won't be addressed, but we know how to address them. So for our expectation is that by the end of this meeting, we'll have an idea of what to present to government, to policymakers, and also agree as we as civil society what needs to be done. Robert pointed out to the fact that government is listening, and I want to commend government, to commend the Ministry of Finance. We sit on that table. When we started 30 years back, how could you enter Ministry of Finance? Civil society, what do you want? But things have changed. They are listening. URA, we even have MOUs with with URA. So we need to continue that partnership. And in order to strengthen that partnership, we as civil society, we need to bring issues on the table, objectively. And I think we have been doing that. I also want to commend our government members of parliament. We invite them, they come, and they are listening. Local government, we have been working closely. We are in Bulisa. In all those local governments, Tororo, we are now working in other 10 urban councils, and we have found a lot of cooperation because we are all Ugandans and we are working for the betterment of our country and the betterment of our lives. Okay, so thank you so much once again for coming. Last, I want to recognize the Fourth Estate. Thank you so much for always coming for our meetings and for putting these issues in the public domain. So I wish all of us fruitful deliberations. Thank you.
Let's give another round of applause, please. And those hands are for Madam Jane Nalunga, but I want to request you also to clap again. I'll give you the reason. Just clap. That is to thank you, because I read the news announcing that the Uganda Revenue Authority was very excited to have hit their target for last financial year. And I think the only people we should congratulate are the people who are in this room for paying their tax. See, those days when they were rewarding the top taxpayers, we found out in our analysis that actually the people they are calling taxpayers are tax collectors. So they assist URA to collect revenue on URA's behalf, and they are considered the top taxpayers. I think the taxpayers are you and me in this room, but the collection mechanism is being done by others. So I think we deserve an accolade for helping the government meet its own objective. Without further ado, allow me to welcome the representative from Oxfam, Uganda, to make their opening remarks, and give him a hand clap as he comes to the floor, please.
Thank you, Master of Ceremonies. Members of Parliament present, the Executive Director, Seatini, protocol observed, ladies and gentlemen. Greetings from Oxfam in Uganda. Also to alert you that our country director has sent you warm greetings. He was not able to make it. He had equally other engagements that came earlier before this. The reason he had to ask me to come and represent him at this important dialogue. Therefore, I'm going to speak largely as the country director, but he didn't give me a written speech. So most of the comments I will make should be attributed to me as a person. My name is Siraj Magara. My docket is Energy and Extractives. I coordinate projects on renewable energy, oil and gas, and mining. But I work closely with financing for development, where we do a lot of work concerning fiscal justice and just economies. Fiscal justice, we look at tax, we look at budget, we look at accountability, and we make sure that the policies and guidelines that help us to achieve fiscal justice are in order and citizens are able to achieve the best in that line. Allow me also recognize the work done by Seatini, especially in the area of fiscal justice. I know for the many years Jane has mentioned, the 30 years plus, they've been second to none. If you want to understand the support needed for tax and fiscal concerns within this country and beyond, then Seatini has been at it. And as Oxfam, we always want to associate with the stars. We don't work with people who don't make us shine. That's the very reason why we are stuck with the Seatini, and we hope to move this journey for many more years to come. Ladies and gentlemen, mobilizing domestic revenue is essential for each country's poverty reduction strategies and long-term economic growth, and financing of vital socio-economic programs. First of all, you understand that when you invest in domestic resource mobilization, you are actually investing in the future, because the resources that are available to meet the needs of the present and the future generation are mobilized now. When you want to sit down and relax without bothering you with your head of how you have to mobilize the resources for yourself now and for the future, then you will hit a snag. That's why it is important as citizens, as scholars, as academicians, as CSOs, to always sit together, brainstorm on the workable strategies that can help us improve our domestic resources. Because we want good roads, we want flyovers, we want good healthcare system, we want good schools, we want so many other good things that you can mention. But if we do not have the resources to achieve all the needs we are talking about, then we are not going to make things work for ourselves. Ladies and gentlemen, we are aware that our domestic resource mobilization is always challenged by a number of issues which have been systemic in nature, but I think we need to find a mechanism of how we can end the crisis. We have always talked about the large informal sector as one of the issues, concerns affecting our domestic resource mobilization. We have always talked about the land question, where people would be producing, do not access land, especially women, and yet we know that without production, then you cannot talk about revenue. And we also know that we have issues to do with illicit financial flows. The money that would be coming into our consolidated fund branches and goes elsewhere where we cannot access it to use it for our national involvement. So it is always very important to sit together with the policymakers and work out the best strategies, the best policies that can bring money in our pocket. I've also grown a bit older, and I'm able to compare what was there and what is there now. And I want to say that we have improved our monetary system. The money economy has tremendously improved. Now, I don't know the percentage now, close to 60 something. We have some kind of monetization. And when the monetary system increases, it also eases DRIM, because it's the money that is changing hands that culminates into the revenue we are looking for. I remember the year was around 1990, 1989. I was in P4, P5. My dad attempted to do some farming, and on a large scale. He went and planted, I think it was like 10 to 15 acres, and he planted maize and ground nuts. So we harvested ground nuts. We had sacks and sacks at home in the store that time. But all the time I was at home, I didn't see anybody coming to buy the ground nuts. In effect, we gave these groundnuts to friends and relatives free of charge. Whoever would come would give a sack, another one two, another one, and we consumed the G-nuts like that. I didn't know why it was like that until I grew up and realized that there was absolutely no market for the groundnuts. Later on, we could not sell mangoes, we could not sell avocados, we could not sell anything. So the monetary system was still very, very low. But I don't think anyone today can have groundnuts and you don't get market. You can sell each and everything you want to sell at present. So that provides an opportunity for us to make sure that we are able to dream. So when I see a dream like the tenfold growth strategy, I know with this ease of monetization and changing of context, this is something that is achievable if we do what we are supposed to do. Members, I don't want to take much time, but because I've spent my time doing a lot of work on issues of natural resources, extractives, I also want to bring light in that line. Whereas we are fighting with the informal sector, which to me can contribute a paltry domestic revenue, I think we are also missing opportunity, especially on the God-given natural resources that we have not harnessed as much. You are aware that we have very enormous potential in our natural resources, especially minerals and then oil and gas. For instance, you are aware that Uganda has undisputed reserves of gold of around 31 million metric tons. And this is valued at around 12 trillion US dollars. 12 trillion. Our GDP is around 64 billion. And it's not even a tenth. It's almost like it's not even a tenth of a trillion. But this gold is rumored to be around 12 trillion US dollars. What are we doing as a nation to make sure that this much revenue that we have the potential of is harnessed and we are able to bring it to our consolidated fund? The last time I checked, someone was saying all this gold is now being slowly taken away to China. I'm sorry for mentioning, don't quote me on that. People are picking this gold already. Before we realize all that value will be gone, and yet we are still crying of domestic resource mobilization. Where are we putting our energies? Coming to oil and gas, you're aware that it is also an opportunity for us to raise revenues domestically. And we are aware that at the peak production, we anticipate revenue of around 2 billion US dollars. 2 billion US dollars, that's also material. It's some material revenue. But how are we prepared, first of all, to make sure that there is no leakage for this revenue? And how are we prepared to make sure that this revenue does what it is supposed to do in terms of touching the lives of the people and bring inclusivity? The last time I checked in the Public Finance Management Act, they were saying that this oil revenue shall be used for infrastructure development and not for recurrent expenditure. And the question would be, which kind of infrastructure are we talking about? And for who? Are we going to invest money only in buying, for example, the airline? How many people are going to benefit directly from the airline? What about my judge whose problem is actually a doctor who is not there in the area where she stays? Is there something that we can think in that line to make sure that there is inclusivity? This oil money is going to benefit the rich and the poor. Then we are aware that some of this oil revenue is going actually to trickle down in the form of royalties. The royalties is what you exchange for giving away the oil. For example, if you are an oil host district, you are entitled to a royalty percentage. And according to the Public Finance Management Act, 6% of royalties will go to the local government and 94% will remain and the central government. Whereas we have very good processes for utilization of revenues at the center, I've not had any similar effort to make sure that when this lump sum of money goes to these local governments is actually going to bring value to the local governments. You know, it's like when you have been putting on a trouser for size 32 and all of a sudden they bring you a trouser size 45 and they say, okay, you put on and move. You are likely to cause issues. It will go coming down and you may even not walk properly. So what have we done as civil society, as policymakers, to make sure that we prepare for all this and we harness the real domestic resource mobilization rather than thinking about squeezing the stone from the squeezing water from the stone in form of getting money from the informal sector, these small monies that comes there. What is it that we are planning for with these lump sums? Lastly, ladies and gentlemen, again on that front, I think when we come to tax revenues from the oil and gas sector, we still have some gaps. You are aware of the projects that we are running under the oil and gas sector, and one of them is East African crude oil pipeline. That's a very, very big project that Uganda has received. But I also want to report to you that the oil and gas, the East African crude oil pipeline, where Uganda government has only 15% share, and the government of Tanzania has 15%. Then Total has 62% and China 8%. So it means the oil companies in total have 70% share. That project has generous tax incentives. And it means that we shall not be getting a lot of tax revenue from the project, because if you read the act, the ECOP Act, which was put in place in 2022, the tax incentives are enormous. And as if that is not enough, those of you, I'm not a very serious expert in tax matters, but I know that we also are at risk of losing to double tax agreements that are signed between Uganda and the UK, since ECOP is also domiciled, is registered in UK. So for the 10 years, ECOP is going to benefit from the generous tax incentives. If you go to the last schedule of the act, they are there. But on top of exhausting the tax incentives, then they can also benefit from the double tax agreements that we signed between Uganda and UK. So all these leakages and other issues may make us not benefit, not earn the much needed revenue from these important sectors of the economy. And yet we think that the sectors of the economy can contribute to the tenfold growth strategy. So I think when we have members like this in the room and you are discussing issues to do with the domestic resource mobilization, you are able to have a very big picture and design the strategies, they are put up advocacy actions that we can really implement as civil society to make sure that our motherland is able to get some money to cater for us and maybe to cater for the future generation. I want to stop here and thank all of us, especially the key stakeholders. I've had the Parliament is represented very effectively. URA, Ministry of Finance, Local Government Service Commission, civil society organizations, private sector. I've had banks are here. I think this is indeed multi-stakeholder group. We don't take this for granted. We think that you really come here because your heart and soul think that Uganda should generate enough revenue to mastermind its own development aspirations. Thank you so much for coming. And I'm told I'm the one to open the dialogue. I don't know that detail, but if that is what I'm supposed to do, then I will declare this dialogue open and wish you the best.
Give Mr. Bagume another round of applause, please. And to defy protocol, the dialogue has been opened with a 10-minute break. You'll pick a cup of tea. We have a 10-minute break, and then we engage into the remaining part of the sessions. But before that is done, allow me to recognize arrivals. Honorable Nalima Betty Ethel, woman MP for Wachiso District, and Honorable Lokwang Philip Irkol, MP Karenga Karamoja. Welcome, honorables. Let's take a 10-minute break, have a cup of coffee, and then we come back and delve into the other deeper discussions of this issue. Thank you. And the 10 minutes start right now, the counting.
Everyone just speak a bit of it. Very good.
total revenue foregone amounted to about 3.6 trillion, which is equivalent to about 13% of the total revenues collected in that financial year. But on the other hand, when you compare this amount to how much government allocated to the domestic development for human capital development, the revenue foregone is about 4 times more than that budget. So it shows to what extent tax expenditures, when we forego revenue, we can impede expenditure in other critical sectors. Some of the emerging revenue mobilization issues and our proposals. Here we shall look at each issue, but also give a subsequent proposal such that we don't lose the points. So like I earlier noted, we still have a large informal sector estimated at about 51%, where some of the key players in the economy are actually not paying their fair share of tax. Have you ever thought about the border riders that are cruising on our roads, yet and most times they are not following the traffic rules, they are knocking the signposts and they just move away like that without paying tax, but then they are consuming the public services. So it's sort of like a free rider effect of taxation, like whereby some people are not paying their share of tax, yet they are consuming the services. Like I talked about agriculture being a large contributor to our GDP, but contributing less to the tax net. The hawkers, the porters, of course, now these are really more of like people who are in the marginalized sectors. But it's very important for us to pay our fair share of tax, then we demand for those services. Have you ever wondered how much the artisanal miners earn, but they are not contributing to the tax net? Lobbyists, stroke dealers, all these are enjoying the services, but they are not paying tax. So here, what we are recommending as the Tax Justice Alliance, we are calling upon government to capture some of these categories into the tax net. My colleague David will ask me how are we going to bring some of these into the tax category. One, we could enhance taxpayer education to ensure that there is a direct link between taxpayer education and level of compliance, that when people appreciate why they are actually supposed to pay tax, it becomes very important for them to be intrigued to pay. We have, as Yatini, we have a project on sustaining tax revenue improvements and development in urban centers of Mitiana and other districts, whereby we had the Border Association telling us that they happily contribute to the tax base through their local authorities. Why? They have appreciated why they need to pay tax. I think this should be enhanced over and over. Then we see the plight of corruption when it comes to accountability during resource mobilization itself, but also on the aspect of utilization. How are we utilizing our money as a nation? The little resources we've collected, we still see that government is running a very huge budget when it comes to NAGTRE expenditures. While we appreciate the fact that government undertook the RAPEX, we still see a large expenditure when it comes to the wage bill, one, but on the other side, the day-to-day running costs of government, the huge fleet of some government officials that enjoy from those services. So as a nation, we lose about 9.1 trillion to corruption. That is according to the IG's report on cost of corruption. But it is very important for us to note that when it comes to corruption, both the taxpayer and the one who is supposed to administer the tax are gaining from this vice. So it becomes very difficult to tackle. Why? Because if I'm driving on the road and then the policeman got me, they're supposed to issue me with a receipt and I should pay in the bank. But oftentimes, if the receipt is going to cost 200,000, I'll be like, officer, can I give you a 50? So you just walk away like that and settle it at that point. Why? Because people have not appreciated why I should actually be a responsible taxpayer, I should be riding well on the road. I should follow the traffic rules and all that. So we need, as a government, we need to disincentivize the cost, the corruption. Like people should find it unattractive. Why? Through like imposing heavy penalties on these corrupt officials. Like we see usually when a government official has been caught in some of these acts, some of them are either transferred, this is common in local governments, from one station to another. But could we withhold their assets and this money should be taken back to the consolidated fund such that people know at the end of the day, even if I steal it, it will not be in my pocket. So we need to go cashless. Of course, we acknowledge the fact that government has invested in several systems, the e-freeze, but at local government level, we have the IRAS and other digital platforms to curb the issue of cash when it comes to payment of tax. And also enhancing taxpayer education to ensure voluntary compliance, that someone who is supposed to pay tax, they are not tempted to actually bribe the agent. So we have non-performing incentives. This I talked about it earlier, that when we come into an MOU with an investor, there are some conditions they should meet in terms of the staffing levels, but also on the other hand, increased production in the nation. But increasingly, we see that the Auditor General Report for 2022-23 highlighted that some of the companies that had benefited from the exemptions, 22 out of 36 companies were performing below 50% threshold, staff threshold that they were supposed to employ. So this shows how non-performing some of these exemptions are. But also, of the total exemptions issued that year, we see that the direct exemptions issued by the Auditor General and the Minister of Finance, of course, it is in the law. They allowed to, but some of these had not been. They didn't go through parliamentary approval for retrospective authorization. So this shows opaqueness, but also limited accountability when it comes to governance of tax expenditures. So what we are saying as the Tax Justice Alliance, could we repeal the MOUs? Could we cancel some of these deals that we've made with these investors that are not meeting our performance requirements highlighted in the memorandum of understandings that we've signed with them? But also regular evaluation of tax expenditures as per the governance framework for tax expenditures for the government of Uganda. I think this financial year, the government of Uganda formally published the governance framework for tax expenditures, which is more of a benchmark, not really a benchmark, but something, an evaluation that when we're evaluating tax expenditures, we base on this framework, and that is a plus for us. But could we have like timely evaluation, and this information should be released in a timely manner? Then strengthen parliamentary oversight when it comes to issuance of direct exemptions. At least Parliament should also authorize the same. So we still have limited compliance by several taxpayers. Why? Because of the missing link between revenues collected and services delivered to the citizens. Oftentimes, citizens do not acknowledge why they should actually pay tax. Why? Because they believe the money being collected will not benefit them. The state of our hospitals, our roads, our schools, you enter Mulago and you're just off. Why? Because there is no quality health care being offered. Why? Because of the limited budgetary allocation to some of these entities. Yet, these social services are at the heart of the ordinary citizen. Then there is also the issue of connivance between the taxpayers. So people don't find the reason as to why they should pay maybe 200,000, yet they can give out 50,000 to some of the agents. But we still have issues of smuggling, especially in the border areas. So here we call upon government to continue investing and strengthening the e-systems to eliminate the issue of cash. but also strengthening the capacity of the revenue officers to ensure that they can easily identify some of these missing links. So for instance, when it comes to tax administration, when like how am I supposed to talk to the taxpayer? How am I supposed to convince them to you don't even need to convince them when it comes to voluntary compliance, but the way the revenue officer interacts with its clients is very important. Issues around taxpayer education cannot really be emphasized because I've already mentioned that, but also implementing a robust dispute resolution mechanism to handle taxpayer grievances. Do they actually know where they're supposed to go when they are not satisfied with some of the assessments or the amount of revenues they're supposed to pay? So that is very important as a nation. Then we have limited taxpayer understanding and knowledge of the tax system. Here we cited the Afrobarometer report for 2019 that showed that about 76% of Ugandans reported difficulty in finding out what taxes they owe to government, but a whole 83% of them also could not, they could hardly find information on how our taxes are spent. I think when you look at that Ginger Road around Nakawa, there used to be a very big billboard that would say, because of your taxes, Mulago is built, it has been renovated. So citizens need such information all the time. Government to come out and tell them that this is how we've used the money. I think there has also been an increased appreciation, whereby we saw government coming out to tell us that the stadium in Hoima is being constructed because of the oil revenues, something like that, such that people are enticed to continue paying tax, but also intensifying campaigns to educate people about their obligations and benefits of tax compliance. Yeah, but on this point, it is very critical for government to evaluate on their awareness efforts. When you look at URA, I think they have intensified through the mobile buses, whereby they go on like offering taxpayer education to people. We need to have a timely evaluation, a periodical evaluation to see what is working well and what is not working, to ensure that we close some of these loopholes. Why is it that while we've intensified taxpayer education, we don't see the results? It could be one, the language you're communicating to people, either they are not understanding you. That's why they still go back, they still don't appreciate their role of tax. But the other bit is on accountability, that when you come to educate us about tax, you should be able to account for the resources that we gave you in the previous period. As the world evolves day by day, we have had an issue of the growing digital economy, whereby most governments in the ESC, but also across the world, have not leveraged on taxing this space. While we acknowledge government effort in collecting the digital service tax and harmonizing it with to have a similar rate with its ESC counterparts, we still see that the digital economy evolves day by day, and we need to see how we include the e-commerce, digital services, and fintech operations into the tax net, because they are sourcing the revenues they take home are sourced from our country. So here we call upon government to build capacity of URA staff on how to effectively tax the digital economy. But on the other hand, also we could benchmark from other countries like Kenya on how they are administering this and how it is doing in their economies. So you also have an issue around the progressivity of the tax system, where we acknowledge that some of the tax heads, like the pay as you earn, that is on employment income, we see that when it comes to the lower band of the payee, this has not been adjusted for a very long time. Yet inflation, the exchange rate has changed. But also when you look at the household survey, it shows that people in gainful employment, their median wage was estimated at 260% per month. It implies that all these people are captured in the tax net. Yet they are earning very little and they have to spend on so much when it comes to basic services. How much does 260 buy for you? We are all seated here, but imagine you are taking home 260,000. It can only buy maybe a little sugar. Can it pay fees for your children in this current economy? Those are some of the questions we need to think about. So we are suggesting, we as the Tax Justice Alliance, when it came to our civil society position on tax amendment bills for 25-26, we have a concrete proposal, and we suggested that this band should be raised to about 500,000, the lower band. But of course, we acknowledge the fact that there is a lot of income that comes from this lower band group, contributing about 200 billion per financial year. But if we could tackle issues around multinational corporations not paying their fair share of tax, I think this money could be drawn from those areas to compensate for these people to be exempt from the tax net. So it's also imperative for government to impose taxes that are progressive, such that high-income individuals and multinational corporations pay their fair share of tax. At the global level, there is this whole discussion going around taxation of high net worth individuals, whereby there's a suggestion that they should pay at least more than, I think, 3% of their wealth. But some of those proposals are some of those that we are thinking about, and how we can actually borrow such concepts into our tax system. We shall share as the Tax Justice Alliance. So some of the challenges in local governments when it comes to local revenue mobilization, they are not so different from those at national level. Still low willingness to pay, delayed remittance from central government. Now with a centralized system of accounts, local governments, there are some of those taxes that, say for instance, the property tax, when the property owners pay that tax, they expect the money to come back such that they could improve some of those the areas around those facilities. But when the money comes in late, it means that people are not going to be satisfied with the timeliness and the quality of services being offered. But also think about things like the market dues. People pay market dues, and then the local government has to clean the market, and usually on a daily basis. But now if you have to wait for a whole 3 months for this money to come back, sometimes the local authorities run out of resources to provide some of these services. It goes back to why they will find resistance in mobilizing some of these tax resources. There's also absence of systemic staff incentives when it comes to the revenue collectors. They're called what? Revenue agents. Yeah, some of these usually demand at least for transport allowance, but this is not systemic. So they also have a low morale to mobilize tax revenues. Limited capacity to administer some tax sources in certain local governments, especially those that have not had property valuation. We are running a project on sustaining tax revenue, like I noted the stride in Karamoja, and in Nakapiripiri specifically. This told us that they are not tapping into property tax. Why? Because they don't have a valuation role. Limited knowledge on tax, that we've already alluded to. Then when it comes to cross-cutting issues, we see limited transparency and governance. So the public usually has little trust in the state to actually deliver services to them after they have paid their taxes. But also inequalities that arise from the tax burden. Like I noted, the UBOS Uganda Household Survey for 2023-24 showed that people are earning a median salary or wage of about 260,000. And these low-income earners are still going to buy from the same shop as you who is earning 3 million shillings. And they are buying sugar, really basic needs of life, but also have to support their families in terms of education, health, and all that. So some of these indirect taxes like VAT disproportionately affect the low-income individuals that spend on basic services on which these taxes are imposed. Other cross-cutting issues that are affecting domestic revenue mobilization, we have tariff barriers in the EAC region. When you look at our goods that go to the EAC, of course, we have an economy where we have supplies. No, we have people playing parts in taking part of our economy, and some of these export. One of our biggest markets is the EAC region. But when you look at countries like Tanzania, they have slapped an infrastructure levy of about 15% from the goods and services that come from the region. So it means that our producers that export to Tanzania will have to incur an extra cost when they pay this tax. Now it affects on the growth of our economy, and in the long run, our revenues will be affected. So we have continuous revenue leakages to tax evasion and avoidance. I think someone, was it the moderator, he's talked about what we call the illicit financial flows, whereby when we go back to 2017, the Paradise Papers really unearthed how some of the elite class are investing in tax havens. So usually this stems back also in the double taxation agreements we come into as a nation with some of the countries. So this is usually used, of course, with the transfer pricing principles, whereby profits are shifted. Transfer pricing and profit shifting. Profits are shifted from a high tax jurisdiction to a low tax jurisdiction. So once you have a DTA with some of these countries, of course, for Uganda we've had one with the Netherlands, and this has left us charging a very small margin of income tax on some of the companies. Then we have unfair tax rules, international tax rules, when it comes to what we call who has the right to tax. Usually jurisdictions prefer to have they prefer, when it comes to, when you look at the OECD mode of taxation, whereby they are saying where countries prefer to pay tax where they are based, where their residency is, unlike paying tax where they source their income from. So for us, that's why we are for the UN Framework Convention on Tax, that we applaud our government to come up and support the UN Framework Convention on Tax that will do an overhaul of the entire tax system to ensure that there are fair taxing rules, one, but also taxation of the digital economy and who has the right to tax. Economic diversification, how do we strengthen and support all sectors of the economy to grow such that they all contribute to the tax net? We already talked about key sectors. When you look at Uganda's leading export today, it is gold, but how much of that amount is being taxed? Yeah. So that is my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Hilda. That was an overhaul of the entire taxation system. If someone listened to you today, I would call you a tax expert, of which you are. Colleagues, why I made sure that Hilda starts with her presentation is that the next sessions and the discussion you're going to have with other panelists here are most likely driven by the overview that Hilda has given. So I never wanted her to present, go back, and then the panelists can come. That's why I wanted them to be on the same floor, so that whatever we discuss now, much of it is aligned with or is obtained from her presentation. I think her presentation was very insightful. some of the other issues I thought could add value to your presentation, especially when it comes to unfair international tax practices, to do with the international trade taxes in the advent of Trump and his tariff arrangements. Today we sleep on this line of a tariff, and then tomorrow it is another one, and tomorrow it will be another one. It has really distorted the way we design our trade taxes, and even the smaller countries like mine are being impacted, and that will pose a risk on how we design our tax policy to be responsive to such international distortions. I love the idea on the non-tariff barriers at the East African community. We are being used as a model regional economic community, as the East African community, that we have deepened integration and we frame a benchmark for the rest of the regional economic communities. But we see we are fighting against each other. Tanzania is introducing this, Kenya is introducing this, and Uganda is saying, for us, we still want the integration agenda to be deepened. How would we form a common position? And even this one impacts even on the way we negotiate with our trading partners like the European Union, the Americans, and the rest. Do we have a common position for the region? That will impact on our international trade taxes, which will eventually impact on how much revenue we generate domestically, because whenever we have a dip in the amount of money we get from customs duties and the rest, then we bring the pressure here. We also have had complaints from other stakeholders to government regarding the frequent changes in our tax code or tax policy. That every year we are introducing something new, which is impacting on the predictability of the business environment. So I think that's another issue that needs to be interrogated in this discussion. But without further ado, Hilda, you presented issues bordering challenges in mobilizing revenue at the local government level. And I thought it is at this point that I will bring in a representative from the Local Government Service Commission to tell us their experience in terms of own source revenues and how they are collaborating with government agencies to administer revenue and also increase the amount they are getting at the local service level. Any other interventions include administratability and the rest. So, Mr. Warakila, if you can take it up from there, from Hilda's submissions, give us the local government aspects.
Okay, I can stay seated right here. Sure, thank you. I have the opportunity to share with you insights of what the Local Government Finance Commission observes and does in relation to supporting fiscal decentralization. It's a commission established by the Constitution and its own act to work around the nitty-gritties of how to ensure that local governments are self-sufficient economic entities and deliver adequate services to the citizens of the Republic of Uganda. So twofold in this discussion of financing for local governments. The Commission advocates and works towards having adequate grants that are structured to support the services that are devolved as per the Local Government Act. But also the Commission works around supporting the local government's ability to collect, mobilize, and administer local revenues that will support their unique development agendas. And that really ties into the discussion today. And in that context, one of the key things that has been observed and the Commission continues to work around is that when the current 7th Commission came on, in 2023, an ambitious target to have local revenues contribute up to 1 trillion shillings was set. Obviously, for whoever had that target, thought it's crazy, it's unrealistic, But at the Commission, from what had been observed, the ability exists. It's just some of the how that has been either not supported or still a very strong work in progress. Now, this 1 trillion target that the Seventh Commission of the Low Government Financing Commission seeks to achieve was ambitiously set to be achieved at the end of this financial year. Okay, so yet the NDP4 puts the target for local revenues at around 890 billion shillings by 2019-20. So obviously, these are two different schools of thought, but all achieving towards increasing the own source revenue that the local governments do organize and mobilize. So to walk this journey, the Commission has championed a few key actions that I think are very critical. The first journey is the automation journey. The automation of the mobilizing and administration of local revenues. The journey has been walked to the extent that the Integrated Revenue Administration System, commonly known as IRAS, is now covering currently 166 local governments. And with the realization of the effort and impact, the immediate impact that it was having on the collections and the accountability and the transparency, the executive decided that let IRAS be the only automation system to administer and mobilize local revenues in the Republic of Uganda. That is beginning this financial year 2025-26, and the Commission currently is working tirelessly to pick up ELOGREV. ELOGREV was the alternative automation system that was used in some local governments, but also to onboard ECT. ECT is the local revenue mobilizing automation solution that Kampala City uses. So obviously, this is a very big vote of confidence in the IRAS platform. And one of the key things that it has demonstrated that it is possible, for example, for a chairperson, a cow, on their desk to see how much money is being collected on a daily basis at their desk. This is a solution that inherently drives performance, but also drives the basics of those that are moonlighting. Okay, local governments set targets for local revenue. That's also one area that the Commission is supporting. But that if they're not set right, two things will go wrong. One, because of IRAS, local governments will collect more money. You and I are now excited about our PFM reforms. You collect more money, you cannot spend it unless you get a supplementary budget. And we all believe supplementary budgets are bad. True or false? Bad, okay? Now, the very good thing of collecting more money puts you in a very bad scenario of supplementary, okay? And that is one of the areas that the Commission is supporting local governments, effectively beginning in 25-26, to plan and estimate and forecast realistic local revenue targets to avoid the phenomenon of collecting more money than your budget. Because that gives you two things. For example, right now, there are some local governments like Chiliandongo that are still waiting for their cool 800 million shillings to come back as collected excess money. Now, obviously, finance will tell you they won't walk in and out of parliament every day to ask for a supplementary, okay? Besides, its underlying connotation of disturbing the whole integrity of the budget process. So this becomes a very nice extension that works in with the automation on IRAS. So when the collections are that transparent, the budgeting and the estimate setting for the local revenue is more scientific and not necessarily based on previous year's collections, but rather on the potential that the local governments do have to collect some of these monies, we begin to see a journey that begins to strengthen a fiscal decentralization, the ability for local governments in a devolved manner to deliver services in their unique nature to their constituents. But also one of the other key things that the Commission does and works on is because of its nature and mandate, it does not necessarily have the whipping authority for those that are not doing what they're supposed to do. So collaboration is one of the key things that the Commission does, and this is along with Ministry of Local Government. And in there, we really are now pushing to ensure to have, among other things, local revenue performance as a key performance indicator for cows. Local revenue is assessed in the local government performance assessments, but the weighting, it's put under financial matters, yeah? So the weighting is really quite small, and we really think that when we get to give local revenue the prominence that it actually is and deserves, we shall see better performance in terms of the effort. Good news, the cows now have more salary. Okay, so they're now motivated to crack the whip. I hope so, because people were afraid that they're supervising people that are earning more money than them, and that distortion was really fixed. Yeah, so we think that now among the key performance indicators for our cows is to ensure the highlight that was made that some local governments don't have property rates, for example, roles, is not, shouldn't be acceptable, because we've seen and just concluded a quick desk check that out of the 177 plus KCCA, we only have about 77 local governments that have active valuation notes. Active to mean implementing and collecting, issuing demand notes and collecting property rates. This is an indictment on the administrations of all those local governments, because property rates on average contribute up to easily 20% of your whole local revenue quantum. So it's an area of concern, and what are we doing about it as a commission? We're obviously flagging it to Ministry of Local Government to see to it that, because many of these accounting officers, their local governments were supported to do the heavy lifting of the actual valuation process. It's an expensive process that was subsidized by the government of Uganda to around an average cost of around 60 million. But those that have done it without government support, it easily reaches as high as 300 million shillings. It is an expensive exercise. So people have dragged their feet on the approval processes of those valuation roles as guided by the Local Government Ratings Act. The process is a bit elaborate. The displays, the valuation courts, and the council approvals. And really the fear is really coming through and discussed that some of the political leadership does not want to have these roles approved because they are seen to hurt the voters. And I think for me, that's something else that the Commission is working on and is doing, engagement and sensitization of our leaders on the value of local revenue to them and their constituents. That is the only one source of revenue that will let you do what you want to do without interference of the center, either in terms of a condition or in terms of any kind of, So that is something else that we're really strong and big on, to ensure that we get that level of support to be coming through. Linked to that is possibly in part of the sensitization that the Commission does to the colleagues and leaders at the local governments, is that the current reform that we have in our PFM structure that requires local revenues to be recorded on the consolidated fund and then sent back for delivery of the required services has sometimes been misconstrued to be a disincentive for service delivery. Case in point, garbage collection and things of the sort. But I'm glad to share, as picked from the colleagues at Ministry of Finance, that as quickly as 2 weeks in or less, when the local revenues come in, local government gets back the money. As quickly as 2 weeks or less. Now, here is the thing. We also have heard of scenarios of local governments that say they've not got their monies for a whole quarter. Okay. Now, because these monies are public monies, picking money from the consolidated fund has a process. Okay. It's your money, but it's public money. Okay, so you have to have a work plan and a warrant for it, as approved by your district council. That is the touchy bit that many of the leaders do not want. The aspect of having to get back this money, but clarifying what it's going to do, okay, as approved by your council. That is one of the key areas that we think shouldn't go away, because in the same 176 local governments, there are others who get their money almost on a weekly basis. But there's others who say they haven't got their money in a quarter. Okay. So for me, with these two scenarios, I often get interested and check with those that have not got their monies over such a long time. The current issue that we have seen has been happening around local service tax as a specific source, but also local service tax only for the local government staff, because that is currently collected on IFMS directly. We're working around a reconciliation solution with URA to have that money get back as quickly as possible. For that one source, there's work in progress on that, so that that's also collected on IRAS. For the other local revenues that are collected off of IRAS, there is no reason why an accounting officer will take 2-3 weeks without getting back the money that has been collected. And where those cases have happened, we have supported, and they're like, oh, it's that simple. And we're like, yes, it has always been. So for me, I would really, really encourage the colleagues in the civil society fraternity to ensure that some of these accountability measures stand strong. Where you hear dissenting voices, let's please listen and support them to use the solution effectively. And I think on that, that's one of those key things that we think are going to push some of those agendas quite straight. What else is missing that we think will support and improve local revenue mobilization better for purposes of facilitating fiscal decentralization? Some of the supporting laws for some of the sources do not have adequately strong punitive measures for non-compliance. Some of those many of them, including the property rates themselves as guided by the Ratings Act or the local hotel tax, the punitive measures or the collection measures that a local government has in the event of a default are often tedious and lengthy. They involve court, and where it involves court and the local government, just know that process can take you anywhere between a year to 2+. Meanwhile, you're running after how much money? The government sometimes are really trying to get as low as 100,000, 200,000 shillings, but add that up over all those taxpayers, then it becomes a sizable figure. Okay, so part of what we are working in, but also why you mentioned that there are some local governments in Karamoja that have said they don't have evaluation roles. I'm glad to share that many of them do, but have not finished the evaluation process. Yeah. Again, the commission is engaging them to find out where the challenge is, because the evaluation lists have been done for them. So the question is, why aren't you moving? And the longer you don't approve evaluation role, people are building buildings every now and then. So chances are high, by the time you approve it, it's outdated. You're either going to have to do a supplementary or something of the sort. So we have mapped, and like I said, 77 only have active ones, and a cool 90 of them are in that process between displaying, between valuation courts, between council approval, all the various stages. And these are part of what we are picking up to support them to ensure that they all have them done. So that is around some of the policy and legal frameworks currently, alongside the Law Reform Commission. We're working to streamline some of these provisions in the Local Government Ratings Act, because there is even no timeline between which a local government should approve a valuation list. So then people sit with these lists for 2-3 years, and what's the problem? We're waiting for this. Now you see, now the chairman said no. But if the law, because of the importance of these sources, is categorical, possibly after you have your draft list, you have to have it approved possibly within 6 months or a year, to allow for all the consultations, we shall begin to see people moving ultimately. So the laws that are currently being reviewed include the Ratings Act, the LST, and the local hotel tax. We also have a concern on the LST for some of those key exemptions there. But let me also mention that all Ugandans pay tax. I think what pains us is some of them do not pay direct tax, okay? The way some of us pay it, like the income tax. But currently one of our key rakers of money, the VAT, doesn't care who you are, what you are. You consume, you pay. The only way you dodge VAT is by what? So the colleagues in the border transport industry, they also pay tax, they pay excise on the fuel that they buy. You don't want to pay tax, you don't ride. Well, you can get an electric one, but you will obviously consume something. So I think we need to refine some of those asks and not say that these were not paying tax. Otherwise, then they're either not consuming but possibly to refine and direct it towards the direct tax, yeah? Which often links to the income that they get. But in terms of all the consumption that they do, they contribute in a way or two. We have also observed one of the key areas that we are working on alongside public service, municipal government, and Ministry of Finance is that the human resources for mobilizing local revenue in local governments is often an extension of the finance department. Many of these colleagues are accountants by training, and their job by training is to follow up on how money is spent. Yeah? How money is what? Very well. But they now also have an added risk, but there's also another cadre that helps us in local revenue. These are parish chiefs, our town agents. So their orientation and training is possibly around other areas. But the practice of annexing the local revenue function as any other duty assigned is one of the gaps that we see. So for all the cities that we have right now, they have departments for local revenue. And when you try and track the performance, we see a bit of movement in there. We strongly believe at the Commission that local governments ought to have local revenue departments as standalone. And then when we craft out all these nice targets, we then can ask questions with a straight face. Because we get feedback, the town agents and parish chiefs, if they are to choose on a given day, if they are to choose whether to go to the field and follow up on money or to go and engage in a parish civil model engagement, they'll run to the PDM one because that's also their mandate and they cannot tell them not to. Okay. So because of the importance and need to collect adequate own source revenue, we are really trying to get into the mode to have local governments have dedicated units or even departments for local revenue, with local revenue mobilizers, full stop, not having it as an added function. Because then when you're going to ask the cow for all these tasks, but the CFO who is in charge of local revenue is also in charge of following up on how all the other grants have been spent. Yeah. And we know currently the grant structure finances close to 98% of the local governments. So obviously they're going to put their work on following up on accountabilities and all that. And local revenue is going to inherently struggle. So that's an area that we really are excited and continue to work on to see how that comes through. Lastly, for me, in the structure of PFM and every level in the Republic of Uganda, we are really hoping to get to a point where we recognize local revenue as a game changer towards local economic development. In its capture in IFMS and all books, it's other non-tax revenue. Eh? it is rated like ETC. You know, we see the strides to recognize it, and those are very good. Government has invested in IRAS. It's a very good positive step in demonstrating and acknowledging the need to collect and mobilize it. And indeed, all other platforms of automation have folded into IRAS. But now next is to ensure that we have, for example, when we have the local revenues collected, IRAS, a brief highlight of how it works. It integrates with e-tax. E-tax, the URS system, is the one that de facto actually collects the money, and IRAS organizes and administers. At the point of generating your PRN, the integration is in the e-tax environment. So that's where the PRNs do come from. So IRAS doesn't give you PRNs, e-tax does. So what that does is then, when this money is integrated on the IFMS, the listing of the local revenue sources as is in the chart of accounts is also not yet mapped very well. And that is an area that we think is also going to be important. But also to have and acknowledge, have local revenue targets supervised by the Local Government Finance Commission. Currently, the practice is Minister of Finance writes directly to the cows and they submit targets. Many of these targets, because of the busy nature and structure and the work that finance does, they want them to put in the budgets and they finalize them. Okay, but the commission, one of these key mandates as well it is set up is to ensure that the rates and fees that local governments set are sense checked for two things: not to be too high or not to be too low. Okay. Now we are really working around having these being submitted to the Local Government Finance Commission for sense checking for adequacy of the targets to guard against the risk of over collections, then you suffer with supplementaries, but also ensuring that whoever needs the support that they need, we go through the whole 9 years of the revenue cycle, check your registers and work with you. We walk the mentorship journey so that to the extent that then we submit those targets to Minister of Finance. We believe that maker checker structure is going to help us add the necessary level of importance. I already said lastly. Lastly, point 2 is that we need to track, and I think here again to applaud my colleagues that we work with, both in government and especially the civil society, to track the utilization of the local revenue that is mobilized. Some of the local revenue laws, like the Ratings Act, are very clear. 75%, or at least 75% of the of that money is supposed to be spent in the localities where it is collected. At least all the others speak around having clear work plans for utilization of these funds. Two key things could be missing in this space that the local governments and possibly ATTAIN can pick it up, have not set up the property rates, the local government property owners associations that are supposed to track and guide the utilization of the property rates. That's one of the gaps that I think can be worked around to close for proper accountability. But 2, not allowing the panicky way that people say, if I don't get the local revenue today, we shall not collect. Rubbish. Or we shall not. So in other words, to try and dampen some of the PFM structures that are driving accountability. Now, when a local government has a clear work plan on how it's going to spend money, obviously garbage collection will be in there. And either it will be awarded to a contractor or some of the very few local governments collect their own rubbish, by the way. Most of them tender it out, okay, to a contractor. And I don't think there's a contractor who is paid on a daily basis. Payments are often lagged in agreed terms and conditions as per the contracts that they do sign. So I think for me, that last strand of accountability for the utilization of the own source revenues that our dear local governments that we all come from do collect will be one of the key things that will continue driving compliance, and especially if it's voluntary. But otherwise, we have seen in the second budget core circular, the PSST has asked sub-counties to write sub-county economic performance reports. And I even smiled when I saw that. I'm like, here we go. You thought PDM was a joke, eh? Demonstrate how your parish has changed because of PDM. I really liked that. But then ultimately, it should be giving us a ton of local economic development. So local revenue as a game changer can obviously be another turn for local economic, development and sustainability of these local admin units. So for us, those are some of the things that we want to see, that as we advocate for local governments to get more grants, for example, sometime this month, yes, the commission is going to undertake one of its annual activities, the negotiations for 2026. By the way, colleagues, the budget cycle never sleeps. We are now discussing 2026, 2027 allocations already. Yeah. As that goes on, we also want to ensure and push to ensure that these local governments can collect at least 1 trillion shillings, so that as we reduce the pressure from the center asks, we also can collect our own money and do what we want with it, okay, to the benefit of the communities that are paying these taxes. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I think this is attentive. I've been a student of local government administration, and I think I have learned a lot from Mr. Walakila's sharing. And I think for the people from the local governments in this room, most of your questions, which you ultimately often misguide and ask the Ministry of Finance, have been addressed largely by the representative from the local government's finance commission. I thank him for that. Colleagues, I'll request for your indulgence. You keep your questions and comments for the moment. We will have a single round of discussion for all of these submissions that are being made by my panelists. So for those who suffer from what we call memory lapse, you may wish to record or jot somewhere so that when we start that session, your submission is not forgotten. Now, there has always been this question that our tax system is gender blind, is gender insensitive. And then someone also said, should I create a VAT regime for women only and create another one for men, and another one for children, another one for youth? Another one also said, if I allocated 70%, 15% of the budget to support affirmative actions for the girl child, would that regard my fiscal system as gender balanced? Another one said, if I have the number of female representatives in the legislature, where number of means physical numbers, is that enough to say they will be supportive in engendering my legislative process? So those are so many questions. But to help us delve into that discussion in relation to domestic revenue mobilization, I have a representative from the Economic Policy Research Center, Hajat, here to give us our views in view of relationship between gender and domestic revenue mobilization. Over to
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, for that. Okay. I hope you can hear me. Thank you, Mr. Moderator, for that very wonderful question. The issue is very important, as the moderator has put it. The issue of taxation and gender in Uganda. Is our budget cycle or our budget process or even the revenue expenditure really gender sensitive? That's the question that the moderator is asking. And as you may all be aware that government has made some strides in terms of making sure that the expenditures and the revenue collection, the whole tax system is somehow gender responsive or not being very gender blind, as he put it. So we all understand that since the 2015 PFMA, what we call the Public Finance Management Act, there have been this requirement that there is need for a gender and equity certificate for a budget to be passed before the approval of our national budget. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to know that there is that requirement that it needs to be passed for gender and equity requirements. And that's special thanks to the Equal Opportunities Commission that pushed for this particular aspect. So this may look like it's something small, but we really understand the role that women and children in particular play in this great economy. And for the case of women, we all understand that if anything is done and it really favors women, the whole nation is favored. Our children are favored. The gentlemen are favored too. So this whole issue really entrenches gender analysis across the budget gate cycle, and then including the revenue policy discussions. So in the other aspect, apart from just that requirement of the budget being not being gender blind, we note that in the area of tax incentives or tax expenditure, there has been an incentive on the menstrual products, specifically the sanitary towels, the tampons. So we understand that there is a zero rating or an exemption on some of these products. And that's very important for women. We understand women are spending, and the girl child, they're spending on some of these products specifically. So this is really a clearly targeted measure in that aspect of making sure that our revenue is not just spent on everyone, but favoring specifically or targeting the women. We understand that sometimes it may look like it's not really important, but we know that in financial year 2025-2026, this particular financial year we are in, there was a proposal of removing excess duty on the vacuum packaging bags, these bags that are used to produce menstrual sanitary pads. So, and also on the inputs that are used to produce some of these products. So it may look like it's a very small issue, but these are very practical cost reduction measures in such a women-centric value chain. So we understand that this particular issue is still pending final assent and implementation by the government. In addition to the zero rating of some of these women-centric products, we also understand that there is targeted taxpayer education. URA here will testify that they have done a lot of work in that regard. They have invited women in certain workshops recently. So a women gathering in Arua in May this year, where URA was holding a women in business kind of clinic, and they're doing some bit of outreach programs, making sure that there is that bit of literacy. Women should know which kinds of taxes they're supposed to pay, how are they supposed to pay them, how are they affected by the different taxes they're paying. Basically, so these business, women in business workshops or clinics have done a very great job in ensuring that there is compliance on the side of women, and also educating them on what their responsibilities are. I talked about tax expenditures. We also understand that the agriculture sector has a lot of tax exemptions in there, specifically the tools, the inputs that are used. And we all know that more than 50% of the people in the agriculture sector are women. So if there is an exemption on the hose, if there is an exemption on the tractor hire services, if there is an exemption on some of these inputs like fertilizers, that really goes a long way in terms of making sure that women are brought on board or they're not negatively impacted by our tax system. It's also another way of showing that our tax system is really trying to be gender responsive or taking that direction. However, my colleague presented here something which showed like agriculture doesn't pay taxes. And there was a counteraction here where someone said that actually everyone pays taxes in their own ways, indirectly or directly, each one of us is paying. So I was really wondering if these incentives are removed on the side of agriculture. We need to do a lot of more research and find out if these incentives are put off. Should we not, if we tax all these inputs, what does this really imply for the rural woman who has to buy this hoe, who has to buy these fertilizers, who has to buy the pesticides so that they can increase their yields from their farms? However, we note that much as government has done all that and much more that I haven't mentioned, we note that there is a blanket application of some taxes. When you look at IFRIS, when you look at these different charges and levies, even from the local government, it's a blanket kind of application, irrespective of whether you are a woman or whether you are a man. So irrespective of whether the business is female owned or male owned, some of these applications are really just blanket. So there is need to do some bit of disaggregation. I think, for example, we understand when I looked at yesterday, I was looking at a certain World Bank report that was drafted in 2020. And I noticed that the rate at which women are starting up businesses is really increasing in Uganda. When you look at female-owned enterprises in Uganda, they are almost making about 40% of the businesses here locally. So we see more and more women starting up businesses, and this is, of course, out of necessity. They look for other formal jobs, and when they fail to get them, they now try to be inclined to trying to start up something small just to feed their families. So when these taxes come in, the levies, the fees, because for them they call all those taxes, and they are charged on everyone, irrespective of how much you're earning, how much your profits are. Really, that is really dangerous for our economy. In that very report, I noted that the World Bank did an estimate and realized that when they compared women-owned enterprises to male-owned enterprises, the profits earned by the female-owned enterprises were 30% less compared to those earned by the male-owned enterprises in Uganda. So what does that imply if there is a blanket tax that really doesn't consider the female-owned enterprises that are already earning below, very thin margins? So that means there is need for more input. We need to do much more. We need to find out how does each tax policy or each tax change or any charges or levies really affect that. We do that kind of gender comparison and find out what does this really imply for the women? What does this imply for the children? Whichever policy we come up with, we need to really do that disaggregation and find out and do more research in that line. So we note that women are already operating on the margin. So when IFRIS comes in and the government wants this rural woman or this Chikubo woman or the Mdala owner in a certain market to buy the IFRIS machine, leave alone buying the machine, she doesn't even know how to use it. So she has to invest in training someone else, maybe among her workers, to do it for her. If that's not the case, they will have to hire an agent to do that process for them, including all the compliance processes, the filing, the tax filing, everything, navigating the URA website alone is really hard. And that digital literacy is really lacking and even higher on the side of women. So, all this, even just mere hiring an agent implies a cost to this business. Having to hire someone or an expert to come and teach maybe the staff in a certain institution or in a certain business how to handle the whole IFRIS thing comes at a cost to the business. And for this particular sector for women, the side of women, as I mentioned earlier, with the low profits, what does that really imply? In the end, you'll find a lot of these businesses closing down, or even before they reach their 5th birthday, they're already making losses and they're pushed out of the market. So there is a lot more that we have to do. So especially on the side of IFRIS, we conducted a study at the Economic Policy Research Center And we're trying to find out what is it all about, when it comes to IFRIS. What do businesses really think about it? We're trying to study to assess the informal sector in Uganda. And to our surprise, we found that over 40% of the business owners thought that IFRIS was a whole new tax. They didn't even understand that it's just a system to help them track transactions and in the end report back to URA. So there is that kind of, lack of information. Yeah, women and so many other business owners have no enough information to really tell them what it is, what is in there for them. But even beyond that, my colleague here just mentioned, in the end, after we've collected the taxes, we've taxed the business owners. What are we using our tax for? When you look at the budget allocations, the national budget allocations, which are these sectors or programs that are most likely to affect women? When you compare the percentage allocations to programs like human capital development, which are most likely to touch women and children, you really compare that percentage with other allocations, other programs, other sectors, you really see what I'm trying to talk about. So in the end, people are not even, they don't feel the need to comply. In the end, they pay the taxes and they don't see the result that comes out of it. Recently, there was a call that was sent by the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development. They were trying to find out, it's a call for proposals. They want a firm or maybe an independent service provider or consultancy to find out how is the tax regime affecting women in Uganda, specifically women-owned enterprises. And that's a proposal that EPRC is putting together right now, and I'm happy to be part of the team. But I was even trying, to find out which kind of data set would we really use to really assess and even do some bit of preliminary findings before we go into the field. And to my surprise, when you look at the data at URA, there is a lot of data at URA, but it's really hard to even find a sex disaggregated taxpayer data set that shows, look, this is the list of taxes that women-owned enterprises pay. This is the level of compliance disaggregated by sex, showing how men and women are complying, men and women business owners. That kind of tax data is really not there. If it's there, it's all mixed up. That disaggregation is not there. I was just wondering, is it really possible for us to really find out or have that kind of database or dashboard capturing some of these issues? Recently, the government passed, it didn't pass, but it proposed the issue or the idea on the 3-year tax break for startups. So I was wondering when such developments really come up. That was suggested by EPRC. We had even suggested 5 years, but they reduced it to 3 years, which is okay. But I was wondering if we don't have a system capturing that kind of data to find out how some of such developments, such important policies passed affect our women here in Uganda, our local business owners, to find out, okay, the law was passed in such and such a year, and we see this is the number of women that started up businesses in such and such a year. And they're the ones, this is the number of women, or this is the percentage of women that's really benefiting from this kind of policy that was passed by the government. I really live to see or long to see such kind of initiatives being put into place. What about compliance costs? I talked about the case of IFRIS. Yeah. Do we want to really put in place to be very intentional on the issue of women, making sure that there are mobile clinics targeted specifically at women? Do we have some SME-led or help desks where there is information that has to be passed on specifically to women-owned enterprises or to female enterprise owners? This could really go a long way. in terms of reducing the cash burdens, because when you tell a woman, you teach them the importance of IFRIS itself, how to use it, then they won't have to hire an agent to do it, which implies a cost for their businesses. So we need that data. We need a gender data stack, a sex disaggregated or administrative dashboard where all these issues can be captured. For us as a research institution, that would really go a long way in ensuring that we bring out some of these issues, some of these statistics, and show government that, look here, when you passed this particular policy, when you did this initiative targeting women, even if it's just trying to find out how many women are maybe engaged when it comes to these women in business clinics, it's hard to really quantify, or for URA to produce a particular number and tell you maybe in this region, this is the number of women that has been targeted, and this is the number of women that has been educated, and this is what we plan. This is the number of women that we plan to engage in maybe the next financial year or in the next 3, and then even following up just to find out after this workshop, what does it mean? How has this institution or this business improved after the government has passed some of these policies? After you've done the training for the women, how has this improved this person's business? Do we see an increase in their sales? Do we see an increase in their profits? Is there a difference between this woman who is paying taxes, whose business is paying taxes, and this other woman who is not, whose business is not paying taxes? What about the issues of informality? Do we see these tax education programs really resulting into more formalization for these businesses, specifically the women-owned businesses? Those are some of the questions that we really have to ponder about. Yes, I'll stop here for now.
Thank you very much. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we know that everything starts in parliament and that's where it ends. Parliamentarians say they represent their constituents, but when they get to parliament, many of the issues they present are national issues. So for the honorables here, you are here in the capacity of a representative of all of us. So honorable on the panel, you've heard the issues that have been discussed from Hilda to David to my researcher from EPRC. Where is Parliament in all this? There are issues to do with accountability, there are issues to do with gender, there are issues to do with the local government, there are issues to do with the legislation of tax policies. How does Parliament come into the picture in this entire process? Assuming you are to campaign here for a vote, kindly convince us. Over to you, Honorable. Kindly give him the microphone.
Thank you very much for the opportunity given. I am Honorable Okwang Phillips Ilukol, Member of Parliament for a West Constituency, Karenga District, Karamoja, which needs a lot of accountability. And when I hear people talk about nakapreparate, whatever, everything negative is supposed to be from Karamoja. However, Karamoja has arrived. I am very happy really to get this question of the state of revenue collection, mobilization in Uganda. That is a key for government, for anybody to survive, to live, must have a source of income, must have revenue. That's why I always tell people, whether you are working or not, you must spend. And when you spend, where is your source of expenditure? In this sense, as a country, we need to have a defined and clear mode of revenue collection. As a country, Uganda has, in the past, been highly dependent on foreign hands, foreign revenue. But now there is some progress that government is putting in place in order to enhance the primary school. So with the Bubu, for example, you know, the decentralization, leave the outside and come local. Can you manage your own affairs? In this sense, we shall come to realize that the revenue mobilization, the revenue disparities in our country is basically hinged on the administration of the sources of revenue. The administration itself has an hiccup that we need to correct. And then the other aspect is the education of our taxpayers. The tax levied on certain tax, on certain environments are not commensurate, is not, how do you customize to a particular environment. We only put a blanket. If it is paying 50,000 for abusing a policeman, that one can work together, but in certain environment is not very good. However, this therefore causes evasion. It makes many of the people to evade taxes. And that's why we cannot get what we need in order to provide good services. In this sense, I would really ask all of us in this room, we have come for a very touchy and key factor on how our country is supposed to be run. In this, as we talked about parliament, our constitution mandates under Article 79 and 90 mandates parliament to have the four roles of appropriation, legislation, oversight, and so forth. Therefore, now, this particular question is on the aspect of oversight. Many of our people may not know what is this oversight. This is basically on the revenue that government puts to ensure that service delivery is equitably received by our people. When, for example, government realizes some funds and parliament appropriates, gives to particular districts, sub-counties, parishes, and so forth. Again, the people on the ground that are supposed to implement do not do what is required. And that's why parliament is mandated with the responsibility of the oversight. Oversight is to scrutinize how the funds given to particular entities that are service providers is used, whether it is used to for the benefit of the people or not. How do we do this? Many of us may think that we just go there and roam around. One thing we do in this is we basically want to get what we call transparency and data access. How is the money, is the last beneficiary at home, an individual on the ground, aware of what government has given in and how it's supposed to be used and how it has been used? Is there some impact? That's what we have always done and we are doing. Me, I personally been in PAC, local government. Those are the accountability committees. One of the accountability committees is PAC local, PAC central, then COSASE. They're about 4. I moved down to the ground to check what it is. Much of what goes on down there is that there is no transparency. And because there is no transparency, the last beneficiary or the beneficiary of the revenue given by government does not know how much was given to benefit them or to bring a particular outcome. That's why we get into running battles with the cows. My colleague said here that the cows have been given some small payment, which is improved. It is, yes, but it is about attitude. It's about attitude of the persons. That's why I sometimes go back to what people say, you must sew the cloth. Is it according to the size of the body that you have? Is it all you dress according to what? So the attitude is negative. Like, for example, we kept asking, the cow in himself is supposed to make a confirmation to sign a check of a requisition after being approved or analyzed by the auditor. But in most cases, you find them skipped the auditor. The auditor is also faulty, and everything is, and you find them making unnecessary expenditure, which is not following the guidelines and the law. How we sometimes do the oversight is we want to strengthen, as I've just mentioned, strengthen the particular laws. We have the finance acts, the whatever, the regulations, but it is flouted. When we go and check, it is why our revenue. I want to tell us that our revenue or the revenue given to the to the people is adequate. Some of us will ask me later on, but what I know is as a country, as Uganda, we have adequate funds. Why do I say so? You will get to know that when the money is given, because of not following the regulations, the laws and regulations, flouting it all through, the money is wasted. And money wasted is poor delivery, service delivery to the people. We have talked about, my colleague was talking here about the budget. The budget is 72 what point. We as a country, as I always analyze the budget as not fulfilled to that budget. But the tricky thing is, if it is 72 trillion, for example, the person who budgets, like when you go to particular entities like a local government, they give a budget of maybe 1 million. But the government, through maybe inadequate revenue sourcing from either URA, whatever sources, realizes not exact amount, but gives like 700,000 if it is, 700 million if it was a billion, which was budgeted by a particular entity. But by the end of the story, the person or the entity that budgeted for 1 billion does not even use the 700. Where could be the problem? It's just because there is poor adherence to the set policies, set laws, and set regulations. So that's why, as Parliament, we go down to check. And this, therefore, brings us to the capacity building that we always go. We also go to, because before we go, we are also trained as members of Parliament on what to check from the field as we go. Through the audit reports that we check, we go down there to check. And in this process, we also train the local councils. We also make them aware of their mandate to do that. And another aspect here is we also do the oversight role in order to encourage public participation. For example, we have barazas. That's why government has come in to bring barazas in order to inquire. Let the people, the last beneficiaries, explain or bring out how they feel about the revenue or the money that government gives them, and how we shall avert certain loopholes that are there. For example, even we went to do a benchmarking in Ghana, where instead of calling people or the accounting officers to the table, it is in the public that everything is read and the community say this was done, this was, and they are fired there and then. Which I think if they brought that idea in Uganda, maybe it will work better, or people will run. So encouraging public participation and social accountability is also what we do as members of parliament. And this calls therefore all of us to be informers, to inform us what we are supposed to do. We are the handlers or the hands that need to put all things better. Then we have we do like a follow-up. Like if an officer has gone wrong, what is it? Is he punished? Is he whatever? You know, I want to get us that Parliament makes laws, policies, approves policies and makes recommendations, but the implementing body or the executing body is the executive. So sometimes what like accounting officers are done is, like for example, one is a thief. Sorry to use the word, it may be harsh, but somebody should have misappropriated somewhere. And when the parliament recommends, there's a delay in the implementation or take action, like reprimand the officer. What in most cases is done is they transfer the error from this station to the other one by transferring the officer. But we are working out as government to ensure that one who has done wrong must be punished from the point where he is, and everybody learns from that point. There are other activities, of course, that we can do. Of course, as parliament, a sole purpose of why we are doing the oversight role is to link the revenue to the service delivery. When the budgeting process is on, which starts from the parish level, we all know about the parish development committees, which originates the whole process of budgeting up to the national. When they reach the national and government releases the funds to the community or to the districts that may reach down there, we now ask, is it commensurate? Is the services given to the people commensurate to the revenue given? That's why in accountability committee, we ask the accounting officers, if this particular fund was diverted, which services were affected? How are the people going to be reinstated to the service they wanted upon misdirecting the particular resource? So we sometimes move down there and make sure some of these issues are handled very well. And of course, we also go down the ground to get the communication. We have non-state actors. We have the CSO, civil society organizations. And those are the people who are hands-on. They tell exactly what goes on. We also do the partnership with them in order to improve services for our people. So basically, when you talk about the state of revenue mobilization in our country, our government is trying its best to ensure that the sources are commensurate, they are equitably distributed. But what is our problem in this sense? We have a lot of challenges. These challenges stem from individual attitudes. When a particular tax is introduced, many of us tend to bring the ABCD challenges. They tend to bring this and add the other. For example, I have been in my personal movement, just move to particular shops. When you ask them to give you how they are doing, they will not tell you, they will not give you the receipts. If you ask them the receipt book, they will not give you. How does an assessor, like my colleague said, he goes to assess to give? How can he assess? From which background will he get the figures to assess? The person sells and puts in the pocket, does not give receipts. How do you know this business is moving like that? So many of our people evade and they complain of a service, and yet they have not provided the income to provide them the service. That's where we as Ugandans need to go down and sensitize. For example, I asked, somebody was giving the process of getting a business. Then when I was asking, what is this, that this one is tax-free? I said, now, how do you want to benefit from a service from government when you are not paying taxes? The person did not know that I'm what? A member of parliament. I say, oh, sorry, I know you're a member of parliament, but for us, what we do, we want to evade at all costs. So that's why you see people complain about service delivery. However, I want this particular organization that made this to ensure that this particular topic here must get down to the local person, such that one, the taxpayer is knowledgeable about why they are paying a tax. Because you cannot impose without educating the person the reason for a tax. They only say, pay this tax for what? They should educate them. And the ignorance of the taxpayers. And they should also be able to know the ability, the taxable capacities of the what? Of the taxpayers. Because you can give me a tax. For example, if I'm like me in Karamoja, the shop markets are not like the shop markets in Kampala. What do I mean by shop markets here? I may have the shop in Kampala and the one in, they are not the same, because the one in Kampala has more customers and better pay than the one in Karamoja. So you cannot give the tax equal. There it takes me 4 hours or it's 2 days to see a customer. And yet here, in a minute, whatever you see people. So that assessment mode must also be customized. That's when we can get better tax revenue, which will improve tax mobilization. With it, that good tax mobilization which I'll realize. But I'm sure we are progressing. People are getting to know why taxes are given. Except now, in this case, like for this particular time of politics, as somebody said, you convince us, because this is a political period. They will definitely tell you that what have we benefited from government. forgetting even the security that makes you talk like that is a resource that government has given. So I request to receive more questions after this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable, for those insights. Colleagues, in the interest of time, you will allow me to the following. One is to request you to keep your comments and questions for now. We are going to have one main discussion at the end of all the sessions. But I've also been advised that we have lunch, just so you know. Will allow me momentarily dismiss join you. And then after they have been dismissed, they allow me to select 3 individuals from the audience.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, colleagues. I already introduced myself, and I want to thank the presentations that I have so far listened to, and to thank the discussants. I didn't know that David Walakira was now in Local Government Finance Commission. We meet at very many avenues. I was once one of the trainers in Local Government Finance Commission, but I'm glad that we are here to interact on domestic revenue mobilization. And I think I may not necessarily come from parliament as such, but from local governments where my political journey started from. I started from local government councils, from the actually youth councils, and then local council 5. And so I have been interacting there, and allow me to come up with a few recommendations from the discussions we got, because we can't continue to lament the whole day. Let us try to find ideas on how we can handle this. And the first thing I'm looking at is the LED concept, the local economic development concept that was hatched. It was actually a strategy of this government that was supposed to take 5 years from 2021 to 2025. And I wonder whether we shall get any reports, reviews, and see how we have performed against the local economic development concept, which aimed at building up the economic capacities of local areas to improve their economic future and the quality of life of all their communities. You see, when it comes to domestic revenue mobilization, everyone almost in the communities are looking at government for collection and mobilization, and most of people are just they are just consumers of the domestic revenue mobilizations. And until we take this to everyone's business, we may continue to point fingers at each other. Government is not collecting, government is collecting too much. No, we are the taxpayers. No, you are not the ones. So I think that does not take us anywhere if we cannot make domestic revenue mobilization everybody's business. And if we only empowered local governments to make sure they don't only sit on desks to plan on how to tax markets and tax very few SMEs that they meet on the way, I think we won't get there soon. It's time now that we intentionally capacity build local government officers in the planning, in the finance, in domestic resource mobilization to make sure they understand money. You know, it is one thing to go to Makerere and get your degrees the way you want them, but you remain a person who doesn't understand money, how it is got, how it is made, how to even project, how to study trends, how to make sure money goes to their right places, is used with integrity, even when we have AI, artificial intelligence, which does not come with integrity. All that needs to be really given as capacity building to these people. And these local governments should reignite local resources by mapping what in your district do you think can bring money so that it is identified and developed, product development and identification, so that we can create more avenues for money. People are sitting on resources, but they don't know how to turn them into money. And the local communities know where there is gold, where there is mature, where there is all this. But we continue to just brush it away when people start discussing the local communities. And this is how we should actually be very innovative. Not planners who sit on desks, but planners who are innovative, business-oriented resource mobilization at local government level. Local government players who are not desk men, but are innovators, who will learn to work with strategic partnerships. I'll give you an example. When I was chairperson of the board of Uganda Wildlife Education Center for about 6-7 years, I found that center, which you call Entebbe Zoo, having a revenue of only 3 billion per year, only 3. And you can imagine how many lions they feed, 9 of them, and they feed on, I think, 2 cows per day. So if you translated that into money, and I'm not talking about only lions, but leopards, the whole cat family is there and is feeding on meat every day. But 3 billion was not enough for them. And at that time, government was giving us only 9% of the revenue we were using for the whole annual, of the whole year. But what we did, borrowing from the local economic development concept, we started engaging people who know how to write concepts and business plans to donors. We had to hire them, but hire them not because we were supposed to give them salaries, but we gave them targets. We said, you write the concept, bring the money, win the money, and this percentage will go to you, 15% or 25%. And these men would put their feet in the water to make sure they write as many concepts. By the time I left UWEC, after 5-6 years, we had a revenue of 13 billion per year from these men who know the languages of donors and how to write those kind of business plans and whatnot. And I'm sure the UWEC has now grown into something that most of the Ugandans actually don't understand, because you may think they are only keeping chimpanzees, but now they have money, they can run the institution, they have widened their base of revenue mobilization. And I wonder whether district councils wouldn't adopt such concepts of working with strategic partnerships so that we can win money for our districts, because some districts are endowed with really resources that can win money, and we run our errands to ensure that our communities are empowered and have service delivery. So I would like to really implore local government councils and local government staff, especially in the planning unit, to identify local opportunities, to map your local areas and find out where we can make money and make sure we realize domestic revenues. Number two is on the district councils themselves being oriented in finances and financial management. You know, when we come to that district council, we are oriented differently, all of us, and in most cases, not in money things. And so for the planning team to just come and throw a budget document before the councillors and assume that they will simply approve when actually they have not even had the time to go through with it. Then there is this secretary for finance who is who can read English very well but not money very well, and they end up approving things without even following the trends. If we budgeted for something the last 3 years and it did not materialize, why would we keep it in the budget documents for the sake of keeping it there? To project well, to learn from our past budgets so that we can have better budgets, better projections and figures. So I would like that we, the civil society and all of us, invest in capacity building for the district councils to plan, project, mobilize and administer resources and give better accountability from oversight. The third one is targeting for revenue at local governments. Targeting for revenue. You know, in the communities, people have learned how to patch, how to fly without patching. When they knew that revenue and URA and whoever is collecting tax will come for them, they have transferred their businesses to homes. And you know, homes and households have not yet been gazetted as workplaces. So there are so many bakeries and garages. There are so many industries and manufacturing happening in people's kitchens and garages and some bedrooms. We have people who are doing even money lending on the street. They have their money in the pocket. If you want a 1 million to borrow quickly, they will just start in the pockets and give you, and you write some document, and then tomorrow they will be taking your land. But all the profits will go to them and they will avoid that tax. There is a lot of avoidance and evasion of taxes because the informality that the communities have turned to somehow is not because they are helpless, but somehow it is because they want to evade tax. So they are doing a lot of businesses down there in the homes, selling and transacting behind us, and we cannot target them very well. I think it is time that we developed that informal sector, gave them courage, gave them enabling environment to come out and declare their incomes and businesses, introduce them to the tax net so that people are not running small businesses behind us after closing their shops. You will see a whole building of shops closed when actually people transferred the shops to home. And the whole community around them and neighborhood know that if I want soap, I'll just go to my neighbor and buy the soap because the shop is there in some bedroom in their house. So how do we deal with this targeting? How are we going to ensure we identify and address the loopholes around targeting people in business and in income generation into the tax net? And we're supposed to do a lot of sensitization, civic education with the local media that we have. And I think the second last issue I want to talk about is let us start a discussion on philanthropy. Rwanda has gone ahead of us in philanthropy. For them, every year they have a flagship activity that they make sure the whole of Rwanda is conversant with, and they know why we have to mobilize money either for the children with disabilities or for the older persons or for this infrastructure that will generate wealth for the country. And then every hotel, every business will have a box where whoever consumes on every other business will have to throw a coin into that box for the reason of that flagship that they have for that particular financial year. And I know that the people of Uganda are very generous and philanthropic. You know, the parties we throw, someone just generates something on a WhatsApp page and he tells us he wants to marry, and then we start 10,000, 1,000, 1 million, one what. In 1 week, the person has 20 million for his wedding. Whether he weds or does not wed, people will still give the money, even when they don't see the face of the person who actually supposed. Condolences and everything. Look at these bashes that we throw, party after party. I was amazed that just last weekend, the whole of Nambole was full of people watching football, and that the tickets had got finished almost weeks before. And then another people were at the concert of Pastor Bugembe. And I said, hey, Nga Uganda has people. I thought people were all in Nambole, only to learn that even at Bugembe's, a whole Nambole was at Serena watching Bugembe's concert, and others who were watching from their private places and hanging places. But all that throws some kind of bell to us. This country is philanthropic. It's only the problem of trust that will come in question. Whether if our government presents a particular flagship and people give money the way we gave during COVID. You saw how Ugandans behaved during COVID. We were just called and everybody was bringing a car. Another one was bringing food for the people who needed food. People were giving money and money. But the issue of accountability became the question. Otherwise, Ugandans, if they were mobilized well, even at local government, they would be ready to really come in and support a flagship that they know benefits the communities. But the problem of trust, accountability, and transparency is the one that should come into question. We should work on it if we have to benefit from philanthropy, charitable giving for social impact that will emphasize accountability. And lastly, possibly, to urge everyone to really talk about this kind of cut for spending and borrowing. It starts with Ministry of Finance. They want to keep spending, and that is why they keep us in borrowing. And this one has gone up to the households, multiple loans, amongst us, the civil servants. Everyone wants a loan. There are people in my communities, for us, members of parliament, we have paid people's loans even when we don't know what they do the loans with. People borrow and they forget that they are the ones who borrowed, and then they come for people to pay their loans. Everyone now is into loans because everybody wants to be seen spending. I think this is some other vice that has come around, and it is attacking from household up to government, which maybe we may have to sit and really dialogue and rethink about our urge to spend and borrow, which goes beyond the money. I know that central government sometimes deliberately sends money late when the financial year is almost ending, so that local governments fail to use it and then return it. Unfortunately, even when it is returned, we never see balance brought forward when we are entering a new budget cycle. We don't know what happens to that money. Is it, is it automatic that it has come back to the government, or somewhere it goes to other people? I think for people who went to basic accounts, I think we needed a balance brought forward from that money that was not absorbed, so that we can start there to knowing that when we enter the next budget, we have this. Maybe every 3 months, we need a budget performance report from Ministry of Finance. There is a time when the Honorable Jachano March, I raised an issue on the floor where they did not release money, and yet they were supposed to release that money as a counterpart funding on some project. And then the Honorable Jachano March said, but Honorable, we released. I said, what did you release? He said, zero release is also release. So if Minister of Finance is going to do zero release and call it release, I think then we need some accountability from them. If at every 3 months we would get a budget performance report, how much did you release against what you were supposed to release this quarter? What are the reasons? How do you expect this local government now to move if you released only 65% out of their 100, especially on roads, where they have projected to do these roads and you can't release to 100%? They have engaged, they have done some bits of mapping of procurements, and then the money does not come, and then we are into the next quarter, and the Minister of Finance is on their neck for them to give their accountabilities. I think central government needs to work on that, or I would want to propose that we get a quarterly budget performance report from Minister of Finance to all the institutions, MDAs, where they release money, so that the questions are asked earlier than when we would ask them at the end of the financial year, which becomes a post-mortem. I think I don't want to go beyond that, but to pray that even at local government level, budgets should not be made to satisfy individuals. Here at national, at parliament, you have seen us struggle. Sometimes budgets being brought back because some individual is not satisfied. Is it an individual who should be satisfied with the budget, or the people who are going to consume the budget? And this happens even at local governments, making budgets because an individual wants it that way and not necessarily the communities. So I would like to really implore everybody down and up to make sure that we think about the people more and not the objects, because development is not about objects, it's about the people. Even if you did all the infrastructure, very good. But if the people are not attended to, the human resource, the human capital resource, if it is not attended to, even if you call it recurrent, it is the people who make development and not necessarily the objects where we want to put money because we want commissions from the infrastructure by giving out tenders, giving out supplies. I think we need to talk about the people more. And I feel that local governments being nearer to the people, because government gets sometimes too far, but the local governments who live with the people, who interact on a daily, would actually mind about equity more than anyone above us, because you live with the issues, you live with these people, you know where vulnerability is. By just mapping our local areas, I think we shall get there. I thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Honorable, for that. I think for those who are preparing the communique from this workshop, she has summarized for you. She's been your chat GPT. You will not suffer so much to come out with recommendations. Let's hear from the extractive sector, represented from someone from our court. You like to come this side?
Thank you. Thank you. My name is James Opito. I coordinate the Civil Society Coalition on Oil and Gas, and I'm here to represent Mr. Onesimus Muchenyi, who has not been able to make it with us here. Just to begin with, ACCORD published a fact sheet in May this year, which actually spoke to the theme of today's discussion. Just to give you an information to the fact sheet, it was on enhancing domestic revenue mobilization through the formalization of artisanal and small-scale mining in Uganda. That is just to show you the kind of work we do around the questions on domestic revenue mobilization, but also to give you some insights onto the issues within the extractives. Now, my discussion with you today is going to be squarely aligned to the extractives because I think a lot has already been spoken. And if we are reading the scripts, you realize that the issues are common, but the question is, how do we address the concerns? And looking into that, we realize that in the extractive sector, there's a lot of opportunities that we have as a country, but these opportunities have to be explored in a very holistic way for us as a country to benefit and to generate a larger revenue base that can support the country. Now, as you are well aware, that the country has moved through a formulation of what we now refer to as the tenfold growth strategy, which is looking at boosting our economy. I think the tenfold growth strategy, the idea was initiated earlier, but then the time span upon which we expect that this tenfold growth in the economy should occur is from around 2023 to 2040. And when you look into that period, that's about three national development plans, 5-year development plans. And that is when we expect that the economy should have grown tenfolds. What challenge does it have? The ATMs, which basically is agro-industrialization, tourism, mineral development, and science, innovation, and technology, delves deep into the country's exploitation of its available natural resources, especially when you take the mineral development aspect. And that's where I want to base my argument from. The mineral development recognizes the wealth that we have. Earlier on, we heard from Oxfam that the country is actually endowed with a lot of mineral resources, including gold. And I think these estimates are good for us to remember that we need to do a lot so that we can participate meaningfully as a country to benefit out of it. If we don't, then even if we call for foreign direct investments, yes, we can get the foreign direct investment, all right. But how much is national participation in this process so that we know the end results of this investment plows back to Uganda's economy? In light of that, I want to say government is doing quite a lot of things which are commendable. Accord has been working alongside with partners like ATTAIN and others, interfacing in a lot of programs. Recently, we concluded our engagement with USAID, and in particular, we implemented some activities around domestic revenue mobilization for development, which I believe majority of us in the House have been participating in this process. But you realize that while we recognize that there are systemic challenges that needs to be addressed head on with very concretized ideas, there have also been a lot of learning. We've had a lot of engagements. And through these engagements, one of the key things that have come so clearly is that the sector is largely informal. And then the informality of the sector, I think in the earlier presentation from Hilda, we saw a figure around 51%. And that unformalized economy means that first, we are not exploiting the business potential that economy should, that sector of the economy should provide. And so the level of productivity is also low. But we know that there are quite a number of issues that make this economy remain informal for quite a long time. And so I am going to use the artisanal sector to just speak through some of the few issues and then share some of the key recommendations, particularly borrowing from the fact sheet that we produce. We recognize that there is lack of access to financial resources, particularly to formalize. And when we look into the artisanal sector, this is also something that cuts across the other sectors. You know, we've talked about the challenges that women enterprises, for example, are face when dealing with how to formalize, how to access financial resources to be able to join the money economy. And we've had testimonies from so many women-led organizations how it has been very difficult to obtain information from programs like the GROW. But when you hear from the TV, I think you hear very nice stories, right? Around how these things are available. But when you go inside there in the banks to ask some of this information to access, we hear testimonies from women-led organizations that it is actually difficult to obtain this information. So I think the lack of access to information and real finance, it's a big issue that we need to focus on so that we can rejuvenate or reignite the challenge of informality of businesses. And we know that from these informal businesses, majority could be women-led, and where we would tap on a great benefit when we allow for this access to finance to happen. We also know that there are systemic challenges in terms of collecting data to manage some of the challenges we have. Recently, we've been part of the process, especially with the government. Government is trying to work around building a national data strategy. We still don't have a national data strategy, and that means the cost of doing business for us here is very high, because if we had a national data strategy and all systems of our economy is embraced into this strategy, it would actually be easy to do business. Because when you are talking about the informal sector, you know the size. When you know who exactly needs to be tapped into the money economy, you know the people. Whatever you need, you would be knowing. And I think government is doing a lot to see that we have this national data strategy. I think it will address the aspect of challenge of knowing from empirical perspective which information and what it is that should be done to be able to improve the size of the formal economy so that we increase the tax base. Unless we are able to increase the number of formal businesses and understand the size of their profits, we are not going to improve by far and large domestic revenue mobilization, and that would be a challenge to us. We know that the size of the economy has improved, I think, from the earlier statistics we saw, but also when you read into the reports from government, the size of Uganda's economy grew from 2010 to 2011 from around 106 6 trillion to now, which is around 220 something, 226, about there. That means it's a huge growth. But the question is, whose growth has it been? And if the size of the economy is largely informal, it actually means there are few formal businesses that are making huge profits. And then there are thousands, if not millions, of other businesses that are actually struggling to join the money economy. And for those who have already joined the money economy, there's also the potential risks that many will actually also fall out of the money economy because of the, because of the shaky waters in which we sail, especially the economy. So when you look into the artisanal sector again, the lack of security of tenure of mineral rights, I think artisanal mining has been said, is seen to be a sector with, first of all, using manual labor, poorly mechanized, unplanned. But we know that recently government passed artisanal mining regulation, which actually helps to improve the law that we now have. Government in 2022 enacted the mining and mineral law, which now governs the mining sector. But just so that we know how much opportunities or risk we have in the minerals and in the mining and mineral sector, is that the current debates of energy transition, when you talk about climate change, climate finance and everything, these are all infused with the energy transition debates, because we are now asking the world to move away from fossil fuels to renewable energies. But you realize that as a country, we are not even yet in the fossil fuel economy. Can you imagine? Our economy is by far and large is in the biomass economy. When you move, maybe we sample from among us here, or we go out there and sample, you will realize that from 100 people, maybe 60 or more are still using charcoal at home, are still using firewood at home. So that's the challenge we are in. But if you would hear reports telling you that no, we are actually not using charcoal, rather we are using other mechanisms, for example, diesel. We are using diesel to power our industries at home. We are no longer using charcoal. We are using diesel. We are using gas. We are using other facilities to provide us the energy we need to do business. That's when we would know whether we are in the fossil fuel economy. And so the world is now moving from that fossil fuel to renewable energy, but we are not yet there. So a lot needs to be done. Now, the risk in the mining sector is so much that while we want to address the question of tenure security in the mining sector, the forces of demand, the global forces of demand might create for us some kind of commotion or seismic activities in terms of our ability to regulate the exploitation of our minerals. We know that the energy transition will require us to deal with the question of critical minerals, the transition minerals, all those other terminologies you hear about these resources. This means the pressure for us to explore, to exploit, and to let others have access to these resources that we have will be immense. And so we need to be prepared with effective laws and legislation, laws, regulations, and policies that will help us to be empowered and benefit from the sector. Now, having shared some of these challenges, we recognize that government has a lot to do. And when we say government, I actually mean you and me, plus the duty bearers we put in their offices, whether elected office or appointed office, but those are our duty bearers. And so you and me, all of us who actually pay tax, we are government. And so what government should do we realize that there is need to ensure strong government oversight. We heard from our members of parliament the question of oversight, but also reading from the papers or hearing from the news, we hear the challenges the country is dealing, especially with corruption. So our biggest challenge right now is to ensure that we tighten that basket so that the 9.1 trillion that is getting lost should first of all, be saved from just going into the pockets of individuals and being implemented, and regulated, benefiting individuals. Because once we don't tighten this basket, the monies will keep on getting siphoned, and then we will fail to plan for social services. And yet, one of the key areas on strengthening domestic revenue mobilization is by ensuring that there is that connection between the tax collected and the services provided. I can tell you that it is not quite nice, I think, to pay tax if you don't get anything out of it. And we would struggle to ask Ugandans to pay the tax they need to if they are not getting the services they need. Recently, we heard that there's a lot of queue in Mulago, for example, for those who are demanding for so many services. If you go to Cancer Institute and other places, you find Ugandans, me and you and others, sitting there and waiting for the kind of service they desperately need for them to improve their health and join back into making money for this economy. And so when many Ugandans see their colleagues frustrated in getting the services they need, they feel less compelled to pay the tax they are being asked to pay. While we believe that we need to strengthen this oversight, there is also need to making sure that we simplify the formalization processes. Now, this simplification of the formalization process is both for artisanal and other, business entities. We know that it's quite easy now to register businesses, but the question of sustaining businesses to see their first, second, third, fourth, fifth birthdays is a big thing. And I think we need to do studies. I don't know whether there are already studies, but for now, if we are to see the number of new businesses being created, I think we wouldn't be surprised to see that most of the businesses being created are actually women-led businesses compared to men-led businesses. And the earlier presentation indicated to us that of the businesses existing, women-led businesses are actually by 35% less in terms of profiting from the gainful activities that they are doing. And so I think we need to formalize the process, but also we need to make sure that the processes for obtaining assistance like finance and access to information and market also improves. In the mineral sector, we have government strategy on creating mineral beneficiation centers and value for value addition. I think we need to do a little bit more as government to making sure that the beneficiation centers actually work and value is added for our minerals. We know that government strategy on value addition is there, but we understand that there are quite a number of challenges related to this value addition, and a lot more needs to be done. The question of training and capacity building has been talked of for all the sectors, which we think it is an important thing to do, especially in the mining and mineral sector as well. And improving market access. There are quite a number of issues, but I think for the purposes of time, For those of us who would want to get a little bit more information, we have this publication which can be found on our website, Accord's website, for you to have access to this additional information that can provide you insights into something that can add into the discussion we are making today. I want to thank you all and to pray that this discussion continues. Just to conclude, Accord is also working closely with NRGI. We are engaging on these areas around domestic revenue mobilization, particularly in the extractive sector. And I think very soon we are also going to engage, and I believe majority of you or some of you would still be invited in that dialogue. Should help us to see how we can enhance domestic revenue, especially from the extractive sector. I thank you for God and my country.
Thank you, Miss. Thank you so very much. Thank you for those insights. The extractive sector remains our hope. They said its potential is even much more than oil and gas. And they say they are just underestimating it. They don't even know the actual potential. So when we see there's potential for revenue, we get enlightened by people such as yourself, we shall leave the room more informed. So finally, you allow me to call upon Joel from the Ministry of Gender. Joel, there have been so many issues that have been raised around women-led enterprise. Give us your experience as a program lead on some of the interventions that government instituted to support women and the youth in view of harnessing domestic revenue mobilization.
Thank you so much, the moderator. I think you'll agree with me that it's very difficult to talk now at 2 o'clock when we are even supposed to go and have lunch. But all the same, I think I'll be as brief as possible. I think I should take not more than 5 minutes in what I want to share with us. The previous presentations, deliberations, I've already talked about why we are here and makes us ask ourselves, what has not been said again? I was supposed to share with you, he has mentioned it right, the experiences that we face in the field. For matters of introduction, I'm Joel Achana. I coordinate a project called the Uganda Women Entrepreneurship Program, which is now joined with the Youth Livelihoods Program. And we focus as much as possible to ensure that we bring women, a number of women who had not yet joined the business sector, who had not started a business, who are not yet entrepreneurs, to join businesses. And through that, I think you will also agree with me that WEP has been one of the flagship programs for the government. It started, it's the biggest government program that supported women to start businesses. And as we talk now, we have about, I think it's about 22,000. That's for WEP. But if you see under the YLP, a third of the beneficiaries have also been young girls. So all these people are out there in businesses. A number of you go to the field, who travels up country, you move all these places. If you go to even the markets, you go to any road, whether Masaka Road was going to Eastern or Northern Uganda, any place you find where there is trade, it has already been affirmed here before that majority are women. They are the ones doing these businesses. If you go to Ministry of Trade, they'll tell you that we have about 1.1 million registered small, micro, and medium enterprises that are in the country. And also, those are registered, but about 1.8 million, if you say it all, including the informal. Those who are not yet registered, you move around, you find a young girl or somebody doing chapati, doing what is not yet registered. Those businesses are already there, and we have them. Bringing it back to the taxation, a number of them are not yet formalized. These women, they are there, they don't know anything to do with tax, they don't know anything to do with whatever you are talking about when you talk of tax. That's why government of Uganda, through Ministry of Gender, again introduced this. I think it was already mentioned earlier, this project called GROW, Generating Growth Opportunity and Productivity for Women Enterprises. My sister from EPRC already talked about a call for studies to be done on taxation and women businesses. This is an area which we, even as Minister of Gender, we have an issue. There is no statistics, there's no data. So as also my friend from Accord already said, there is work for us to do as government. Government, which he meant, he was very right. You, me, and the duty bearers, we need to do a lot of work in that area to study, because what I was reading from somewhere, there is a small study I saw by Makerere University. They did a small study on the impact of what? Taxation on the women vendors in Nakawa market. It is online. If you read and you'll see it. They brought in issues that we need to see as those who handle. I think those issues should be presented to URA and us at local government levels who are always from time to time having these law enforcers. You know, the law enforcers in the districts, they are the ones now the women know much better than even the URA people who are supposed to mutually engage the women to ensure that they join the taxation, the formal taxation system. A number of the registration, for example, it is not the processes. The one of that study said the registration processes for the women is really not very easy. Talk of IFRIS. Even us here or any other woman, you go and tell her, do you have a TIN, tax identification number? So a number of them will say we don't have. I don't know even what you're talking about. That is something that we really need to look at as people who are talking about tax. Those of us who are saying, how can we improve the taxation system in this country? We also have the issue of awareness. I already mentioned women. A number of them are out there, but they don't know that they're supposed to pay tax. If you see, we've talked about a number of 30%, I think 40%. My friend Hilda already talked about it. 40% of the women are in the informal businesses. They are the ones who are running these SMSCs, but they don't know about this tax. How I imagine if all these women were supported and they were aware that I as a citizen of this country, have the obligation to pay tax, how much more would our tax revenue increase? Another issue that I think we may also have to talk about is the issue of now having these women formally join the taxation system. For example, I mentioned how GROW. Some school of thought say GROW came in to ensure that many women who are in the informal sector actually join the formal business system, financial system. For example, many of them could not go to the bank to access a loan because the bank would ask A, B, C, D, which they are not. Are you registered formally? They are not. Are you having a TIN? Do you have all? They are not. So a number of them were not. That's why that project, ideally they say it's supposed to be in the bank so that it can push number of all these women. The project is targeting 60,000 women enterprises at the end of the first cycle, which ends in 2027. If 60,000 women are pushed into the formal financial system, how much more shall we have pushed women whose income are identified by government, the revenue sources are known and can be taxed. That is something that I think GROW project under Ministry of Gender is looking at. That would really support the discussions that we've been having here. I think I will not talk more. Others I should have talked about were the lack of the statistics which I already mentioned, and the other one was on the issue of the porous border. I saw a project which the project by ATTAIN also targeting Tororo. We've been in the field at times in Tororo. You'll find that there are a lot of porous borders. A number of women cannot really participate in the smuggling and all this. That if you see there's so many smuggle goods coming from Kenya, and majority of them are being done by the men. Women cannot do this. And let's remember, these businesses, when they come, those smuggle groups tends to be cheaper than the ones which the women are doing. And those are the issues that are really affecting women businesses. So I think in summary, if I can mention here, I'm so happy for these discussions that have been shared here. I'm so grateful, and how I wish ATTAIN and the organizers, and good enough, we have the honorable members in this house, if we could take this discussion to higher levels. Let's blow this, make noise out of what we've discussed here and go out, so that our taxation system are inclusive. Many of the women are still out, and yet they are the majority. They say they are the majority out there doing businesses. A very few percentage of those who are being taxed, but a good number of them are out and they are not being taxed. So I think I thank you so much. Let me just end here and allow me to go down and sit. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think I will have Herbert from ATTAIN Uganda to come and carry out the last activity of this engagement, and he will guide us through the remaining parts of the sessions we have had today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, moderator, comrade Robert Suna, for sailing us through the earlier sessions. I observe that the energy levels are really getting low, and I'll make this real quick. I stand on the earlier protocol that was observed. And dear ladies and gentlemen, I'll be making a very quick presentation on the tax system we want in Uganda. And I would like to first state this, that I'm presenting this on behalf of the Tax Justice Alliance Uganda, which is a loose coalition of civil society organizations, individuals, and other networks that advocate for an equitable and accountable tax system in Uganda. So the tax system we want, the citizens demand a tax system that works for them. And so everything that is going to be presented is based on the concerns and aspirations of citizens. So if I mention citizens, I request that we recognize this was done in a consultative manner. We organize a number of engagements, dialogues at the subnational level, at the national level, and we reach out to so many constituencies, including youth, women, business community, micro, small, and medium enterprises, among others. Thank you so much. So I'll just run through this. I'll skip the outline, but rather we could go to the tenets of an equitable and accountable tax system in Uganda. While I was starting, I mentioned that the Tax Justice Alliance Uganda advocates for an equitable and accountable tax system in Uganda. So when we talk about an equitable and accountable tax system in Uganda, there are features of this system. And one of the features is fairness and equity. The other is transparency. There must be citizens' participation, accountability in spending, progressive taxation, whereby if your income increases, the tax should also be commensurate to the same. The issues of simplicity and accessibility, addressing issues of tax evasion and abuse, responsible incentives, homegrown finances, among others. I'll spare you the rest of the details, but rather get to reclaiming the social contract. As the Tax Justice Alliance Uganda and CATTAIN, we recognize that the social contract is the gel that binds the government and the citizens. And so when citizens pay their taxes, although tax is a non-quid pro quo payment, but at least that should translate into provision of social services. There should be service delivery after paying taxes. And this is anchored within the Constitution, Article 1 of our Constitution, the Constitution of Uganda, that gives powers to the people to decide how they are governed. So that's how we trace the social contract. But also as part of that, elections, we observe that we are building towards general elections. And as part of that process, the issue of accountability cannot be overemphasized. That as our dear honorable members, our leaders, reach out to their constituencies, the citizens also need to make some sort of demands and shape their agenda. Because going to parliament as a member of parliament, there is a legislative mandate that one carries. And they go to parliament representing the citizens, their constituencies. So it's like the citizens have gone to parliament when they elect a member of parliament. So the member of parliament becomes their ears and eyes and minds on the ground in parliament. So through this consultative process, citizens indicated that it's a chance. General elections provide an opportune moment to make their voices heard and also share some of the aspirations and concerns that are also embedded in this tax manifesto, the Citizens Tax Manifesto. We could go to the next. The issue of reclaiming the tax, the social contract is important because if citizens don't appreciate that better services are provided, it means in a way the social contract will be broken. But if better social services are provided, then we could confidently say that the social contract is alive between the citizens and the government. But also, most often we've observed, not in a political way, but in a way that positions us as an organization or coalition that advocates for an accountable and equitable tax system in Uganda. That more often during campaigns, although taxes are our shared contribution to national development, but they're often ignored in campaigns where leaders make promises that we will construct this road without linking taxation to service delivery. So it's the linkage that I'm trying to emphasize, that you can't make a promise that you'll construct a road without qualifying it and mobilizing citizens to pay their fair share of taxes. That's where the revenue will be derived to contribute to construction of the roads. And I would like to ask a question. Does increased compliance equate to better service delivery? We might not give the answer now, but of course, when citizens pay and contribute to national development through paying taxes, that should equate to better service delivery. Earlier on, we talked about how there is a growing apathy among citizens. If citizens don't see the value of their money that they contribute through taxation, they'll be laid back in terms of paying taxes, and they will find any ways of evading. But also, there's something that is projected on the screen where Uganda Revenue Authority presents the tax compliance cycle. And there's a segment here, 5, where they indicate that enjoy benefits of paying taxes, in brackets, roads, schools, medicine, electricity, security, etc. But of course, that is not automatic. So I just wanted to emphasize that. So the summary of citizens' demands include citizens are demanding fairness in who pays and how much, openness in how our taxes are used, citizens' involvement in tax decisions, and a tax system that funds real development and reduces poverty. But also, we could go to the next. On that section of citizens' demands. Go to the next, please. So one of the concerns is citizens don't understand the tax system. And one of our able panelists raised the issue of their research at EPRC that their research revealed that 40% of Ugandans don't even understand the IFRIS, the electronic fiscal receipting and invoicing solution. They don't understand it. So if citizens don't understand what IFRIS means and they are taking it to be a tax, and 40% of Ugandans, it means there is a lot that needs to be done in terms of tax education. And of course, even according to the Afrobarometer 2019 survey, module on taxation, it revealed that 76% of Ugandans don't understand what taxes they should pay. But also 83% don't know how their tax money is spent, which leads to mistrust and confusion. And so citizens are demanding that government calls for tax input. And of course, this is in line with the consultations on annual tax bills. The consultations go for 2 weeks. But as the Tax Justice Alliance Uganda, we are proposing that this should be extended to 1 month to allow for adequate input into the annual tax bills. Please, let's go together. The next. And of course, clear feedback should be given to citizens on how their views influence decisions. We'll go to the next, please. And the next, citizens are saying they pay taxes but struggle with limited access to quality social services like schools, and these government schools, hospitals, public hospitals. Roads are still poor quality. And of course, I would like to emphasize that marginalized groups, including women, youth, rural communities are neglected. And so citizens are demanding that government invests in quality education, health, and roads. And also the need to align spending with citizens' priorities. There is also need to involve citizens in monitoring how money is used. We could go to the next. I'm just going to run through this because I realize the energy levels are low. There are issues around citizens being left out of tax decisions. And I cannot overemphasize this, that the tax consultations are more of elitist, that businesses and educated people are consulted. Whereas it should be really important to reach out to all citizens, including the ordinary citizens. But also when we go to the next, rich people and big corporations dodge taxes. In other countries, developed countries, high net worth individuals gladly contribute to national development. However, in our country, Uganda, high net worth individuals are pampered. In fact, they are being begged to contribute. We talk to them in a nice way, and yet it should be their duty to contribute, to gladly contribute. There are issues around some companies abusing tax agreements, like the double taxation agreements, to avoid paying taxes. And citizens are demanding the need to renegotiate tax treaties to benefit Uganda, to have stronger tracking and information sharing with other countries, clear plans to tax the super rich fairly, support global tax rules under the UN Tax Convention negotiations, among others. And just to run through the next, unfair taxation of small businesses, citizens observe that many small businesses, MSMEs, are taxed unfairly under the presumptive tax, and most don't understand who is supposed to pay, when, and how. And so citizens are demanding the need to have clear public awareness campaigns on presumptive tax, stronger coordination between UR and local governments, And the other issue I would like to emphasize is the plight of workers who are overtaxed. The current pay-as-you-earn thresholds don't reflect the cost of living. The threshold of 235,000 Uganda shillings should be revised and increased to 500. But also, I'd like to connect this to investment. When we advocate for a minimum wage to be put in place, if we put in place a minimum wage that is within the threshold of pay as you earn, it means there is revenue that will be derived from the same. So citizens are demanding for a national minimum wage. And as the Tax Justice Alliance Uganda, we believe that an equitable and accountable tax system in Uganda is possible. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to me. That is it. Those are citizens' concerns and demands, and they are not concerns of Siatini, but as a Tax Justice Alliance Uganda collective, we reached out to citizens, and that's what they shared. I would like to thank you, away from the presentation, for honoring our invitation to recognize the honorable members of parliament that spared some time and sat through all the presentations and also made their contributions. And from the executive director of Siatini, and on behalf of our co-organizer Oxfam, we appreciate, but let's continue with the engagement. It doesn't stop here. As Siatini, this is part of our work to reach out to different constituencies, to obtain their views and concerns, so that as we engage at the different levels, we cascade the same to influence tax policies, tax systems, but also to amplify citizens' voices and views in all the engagements. And I would like to make some administrative announcements. But first, I would like to thank our moderator for moderating this engagement very eloquently. A round of applause to him. Thank you so much. And a round of applause to all of us. I know I haven't given us a chance to react or respond, but this is still in the pipeline. We are still working on this manifesto. And so your contributions can be sent to Siatini via the emails on our website, and it will be shaped further and advanced at different levels. My colleague has lunch coupons. I request